Chapter 107 Challenge Postponed. Chapter 107 Challenge Postponed. The outside of the 16th Martial Courtyard was surrounded by many people. All of them had heard the news and hurriedly came over to watch a good show. A man with a delicate and pretty appearance came out. As the fair-skinned handsome boy showed himself, Chun Xiang heard many girls screaming behind him. "It's Mo Yuan, the man on top of the 10 most handsome males list. I finally got to meet him," one girl screamed. Mo Yuan had a calm smile on his face, and was very charming. Indeed, it was quite lethal for many females as he looked like a gentle, refined scholar. Although he was a first-ranked inner courtyard's disciple, he was not an arrogant person. At this moment, behind Mo Yuan a man appeared. When this man looked at others, his eyes were definitely squinted, and he had a look of pride on his face, making many onlookers have an impulse to beat him. "Squinted snake!" Yun Xiaodao shouted in shock. He had never thought that this guy actually belonged to the first-ranked inner courtyard. "Listen clearly, my name is Su Weilong. Do not call me that," that man shouted. Mo Yuan had a faint smile. "You should be Chun Xiang. I've heard a lot about you. After I came to know about you, I thought that I would run into you sooner or later, yet I did not expect it to be so fast. We happily accept your challenge, feel free to choose the time." Mo Yuan gave a very good impression on everyone, so Chun Xiang slightly smiled and stated, "Today is good." Zhu Rong said, "Let's discuss the challenge rules, after all we only have 3 people. Mo Yuan laughed and said, "You will have to be at a bit of a disadvantage then, because we have 10 people who competed for this martial courtyard and ultimately won. That is why whenever someone comes to challenge us, all 10 will obviously take it upon themselves. You 3 must defeat all of us to win. It will be a one-on-one battle and whoever loses cannot fight again." This Mo Yuan had an excellent temperament and hadn't looked down upon the opposite party just because they had 3 people. Besides, he must do so to uphold his status and win. More and more people arrived. The first-ranked inner courtyard, whether it was inside or outside, had been filled by other disciples. There were more than tens of thousands of disciples, and they were all observing the discussion happening at the entrance. For them, this was a great show to talk about. Also, it was a very good chance for the newly incorporated Peerless Martial Sect disciples to take a look at the strength of the first-ranked inner courtyard of the Extreme Martial Sect. More than a dozen true martial realm martial artists had come over as well, but many of the disciples had not yet recognized them. These people were all called out by Hao Dongqing to join in the fun. 3 against 10, this was indeed very disadvantageous. Many people thought that winning this was not at all possible. After all, they were fighting against the first-ranked inner courtyard's disciples. All of them were halfway to the true martial realm, and their strength was unfathomable. Although Chun Xiang had blossomed in a radiant splendor during his inner sect assessment, nobody was that optimistic about him. Not to mention Yun Xiaodao looked more like a child while Zhu Rong, this type of fat man, looked more like a very good bully. "No problem, we are ready," Chun Xiang said. While coming over, they had already learned of these rules. "Good, now let us start." Just as Mo Yuan was about to finish his sentence, an interrupting voice came from far away. "Wait, I have to ask Chun Xiang something. If it is confirmed, then the compet 1. Tian will not be carried out." A bald old man with white eyebrows suddenly appeared in front of Chun Xiang's group. This was Wu Keiming. Just a moment ago, his voice had sounded very serious. When everyone heard his tone, they already knew that a major event had occurred. Besides, Elder Wu seemed very dignified right now. "Chun Xiang, during the period of time when you went to investigate the Heavenly Dragon treasure, did you kill 10 Beast Martial Sect inner disciples?" Wu Keiming asked, intently looking at him. "Yes." Chun Xiang was actually surprised in his heart. He knew that these things would eventually be transmitted back, but he had not thought the consequences would be so serious. After all, it was the Beast Martial Sect who were in the wrong. When Wu Kaming appeared, the crowd had quieted down. After hearing this information, everyone could not help but be surprised. Chen Xiang had actually killed another sect's inner sect disciples. Moreover, it was 10 of them. This matter was very serious. Wu Kaming nodded his head and asked, "So is it true that you also killed one of the beast martial sect's true disciples in the mysterious realm?" As these words went out, it was as if an explosion happened in everyone's minds. Their thoughts went blank and their eyes were wide open. Their mouths were wide open as everybody stared at Chen Xiang. To their utter shock, Chen Xiang had killed a true disciple. That was a martial artist in the true martial realm. Had Chen Xiang attained strength comparable to that of the true martial realm? How was that possible? He was only 17 years old. Chen Xiang looked calm as he nodded his head in response, saying, "Yes, I took advantage of her being injured and killed her, otherwise she would have killed me. What is wrong with me doing this? Should all extreme martial sect disciples willingly get slaughtered by beast martial sect's true disciples?" Everyone sucked in a long deep breath. Chen Xiang only took advantage of the other party while they were weakened after they attacked him. His words indicated that Chen Xiang had not yet entered the true martial realm, but they were still extremely shocked. To kill another sect's true disciple was an extremely serious matter. If it had been me, I would have used a single sword to get rid of them, Yun Xiaodao said, yet in his heart he was secretly blaming Chen Xiang as he didn't inform them of this sort of thing. Killing them is good. Those people from the beast martial sect have been too proud, already saying that they have transcended our extreme martial sect. Hao Dongqing jeered as several other true martial realm martial artists cried out in support. Most of them were shocked because they knew very well how strong those in the true martial realm were. To their surprise, a true martial realm martial artist had been killed by a little devil in the mortal martial realm. Chen Xiang, I know the reasons behind your actions and I am sure that it was not false. I am also extremely furious, but the beast martial sect demanded us to come up with evidence. Unfortunately, we do not currently have any evidence to support any of your actions. Wu Kaming said, and he knew that Chen Xiang had killed the beast martial sect disciples because they had been feeding extreme martial province civilians to their demon beast. When he had learned of this, he was extremely furious and wanted to gather all disciples immediately to go and forcibly demand an explanation from the beast martial sect or destroy all of them. The dean as well as Elder Dan have gone behind closed doors for training. We have to wait until they have come out as only they can make this sort of important decision. I also have to consider the overall situation, as such I will have to put you in detention, Wu Kaming said. Chen Xiang nodded his head in response. He understood what Wu Kaming said very well. This detention was only because the beast martial sect were observing them, and Wu Kaming had to do so because of the long-term perspective, needing to wait for Elder Dan or the Dean to come out of their closed-door cultivation. It's good that you understand, but you are also to blame for starting off so ruthlessly. You turned every single one of their corpses in meat patties. Furthermore, you had intended to kill a dozen more true marital realm martial artists who were unable to move. Fortunately, you did not succeed, otherwise the extreme martial set would have been besieged by at least 2 different sects. Wu Kaming lamented. He had learned from the information given that at that time, Chen Xiang had a very high intention to kill. If he was given a little bit of time, the other true martial realm martial artists would likely have also been reduced to meat patties. These words gave everyone twice as much stimulation as before. Chen Xiang had only went out once, yet he had done such earth-shaking things. At this moment, everyone realized why Chen Xiang dared to challenge the first-ranked inner courtyard. He had dared to slaughter true martial realm martial artists. Why wouldn't he dare to do such a thing? Such strength, such courage, these characteristics made everyone marvel in awe and deeply admire him. Xiaodao Lao Zhu. Wait for my return. Chen Xiang left this sentence before leaving with Wu Kaming. Yun Xiaodao took a deep breath, said, dead fatty. When he comes back we are not allowed to disappoint him. Zhu Rong laughed and said, obviously, this brat's deeds are always so terrible. The question is whether or not we can also do one or two such things before he comes out. Otherwise the both of us are going to embarrass him. Yun Xiaodao laughingly said, dead fatty, your courage is growing bigger and bigger, let's go. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong left as the crowd dispersed. They were all very disappointed they were unable to watch the compet. 1. Tian, but gratified they had seen Chen Xiang, this man of legends. Chapter 108 Huang Jitian. Chapter 108 Huang Jitian. Both Mo Yuan and Su Weilong's complexion became somewhat dignified. If it was before, they perhaps would not have paid any attention to Chen Xiang, but now Chen Xiang had killed 10 beast martial sect's inner sect disciples, and a beast martial sect's true disciple. They knew Chen Xiang was not an ordinary character. Even if the true disciple was injured, her strength was still very strong, but ultimately she had become meat patty by Chen Xiang. Wu Keiming led Chen Xiang into the mysterious realm inside, and walked towards the depths of a high mountain. Elder Wu, where are we going? Chen Xiang asked. We're going to the forbidden land of the extreme martial sect, which is dedicated for detentioning repeat offenders. This place is known to all Tai OONS of the Chenwu mainland's major sections. After an extreme martial sect disciple commits a great sin, locking the disciples here allows the other sect to have great satisfaction. Wu Keiming sighed and said, the extreme martial sect disciples locked here in all likelihood dies, but I hope you can handle it. Chen Xiang in his heart was startled, asked, generally how does everybody die? They die of old age, or their mind cannot stand the torment. Wu Keiming said, there is no escape out of it? Chen Xiang asked with surprise. Unless the dean commands, otherwise whoever escapes has to die, so you have to stay in there till the dean exits from his closed-door training. Wu Keiming had a look of fear in his eyes. That forbidden land was established by the master of the extreme martial sect's founder. It has a bizarre power, and even if the character standing at the peak of the martial world goes in there, they are unable to escape even if given wings. Here it is not only for detentioning extreme martial sects people, but also other sects people, but they all are dead. Chen Xiang's heartbeat became extremely quick, and he had not expected he was actually going to be locked in such a frightening place. After a little less than half an hour, Chen Xiang, who was following behind Wu Keiming, was running. He was going to be imprisoned and surprisingly, he also had to run while following others. This made him not know whether to laugh or cry. They arrived next to 100 zhang wide dark sinkhole, the bottom of which was not visible. Chen Xiang leaned over on one side and looked, released his spiritual power, but still could not in any way probe the other end of the sinkhole. Under this is where you're going, Wu Keiming said. Can I not go? Chen Xiang in his heart felt jittery, because it was full of freezing cold death chi below. It was very frightening, and its bottom was very deep and not visible. Wu Keiming mischievously laughed. Go down! After he finished speaking, like lightning, he kicked Chen Xiang's S and kicked him down. Old baldy fuck, your mother's. From below came Chen Xiang's various sickening curses. Chen Xiang had not at all expected that after falling down, he actually would not be able to use his true chi. He could not release a vermilion bird firewing, and if he fell down like this, he would be very seriously injured. This brat's curses are really ugly. Oh well, the bitterness that he is going to taste below makes me feel a little better. In the future I'll do less of such a thing, every time I have had to bear these curses. Wu Keiming shaking his head sighed, then left. Chen Xiang fell for a good while, only to see some bright light below which was a bunch of flames. The more he looked below the darker it was, but it was faintly illuminated by firelight. Chen Xiang could see sparkling waves. Below there was water. Splash! Chen Xiang fell into the water, and in that moment, he noticed he could use his true chi. he hurried to swim out of the water, watching that heap of flame. What made Chen Xiang surprise was the fact that next to those flames there actually was an old man. This old man had long hair up to his waist, and those white hairs were messy as well as dirty, but his face didn't have any wrinkles, not even a little trace of being old. His long beard looked ordinary, and if he tidied himself, he would certainly look like a celestial sage. "Brat, say something." The old man, with his pair of brightly lit eyes, looked at Chen Xiang. At this time Chen Xiang became alert, in order to not get attacked by this old man. "Lo, mister," said Chen Xiang. From before he knew this was the forbidden land of the extreme martial sect specialized for detentioning repeat offenders, and they had been held here until they died of old age. That old man suddenly started laughing, quickly arrived beside Chen Xiang. He was extremely quick, and Chen Xiang simply had no time to escape. His wrist was grabbed by that old man, followed by a peculiar power getting poured into his body. He also hurriedly operated the Tai Chi divine exercise. To Chen Xiang's utter shock, this old man even probed his Dantian situation, and that was one of Chen Xiang's most confidential secrets. Turned out to be a yin and yang divine vein. Unrivaled genius, unrivaled genius. You finally did a great thing and finally sent someone to inherit my mantle, haha. That old man maniacally started laughing. The old man quickly started laughing, but just as quickly he immediately stopped too. In the next moment he became serious and said, "Starting today, I'm your teacher, quickly take me as your teacher." Chen Xiang in his heart was shocked, because the matter of his yin and yang divine veins had been known by this insane old man. He couldn't help it but admire this insane old man. "I do not even know your name, and you want me to pay respect to you as a teacher?" Chen Xiang, pursing his lips, said, and he knew this old man was very formidable. Previously when he grabbed him, even with all of his power he wasn't even able to offer a little resistance. The old man reorganized his hair, smiled and said, "I had not expected that with your wee bit strength you were actually thrown here. Tell me, what kind of outrageous thing did you do outside?" This old man, unexpectedly no matter what, continued to acknowledge himself as Chen Xiang's teacher. "I killed a true disciple and 10 inner sect disciples of the beast martial sect." Chen Xiang truthfully said and asked rhetorically, "How about you? Looking at your appearance, you should have been staying here for a long time." Hearing Chen Xiang's words, that old man in turn once again started wildly and maniacally laughing, as well as slapping the ground and rolling over the ground. "This is simply the heaven's will. You killed a beast martial sect's true disciple, and I killed the beast martial sect's dean. You definitely should take me as a teacher, and I'll pass you a powerful martial skill." That old man laughed and said. Chen Xiang was petrified for a moment. He totally had not expected this old man would have killed the beast martial sect's dean, but he didn't believe even a little bit of the words of this old man. "Little devil, do not doubt my words. I'm the extreme martial sect's 13th generation dean, Huang Jitian. By the way, which generation is the dean now?" Huang Jitian asked. Chen Xiang was once again surprised for a moment. He had certainly heard the name of Huang Jitian. He was the dean before the former dean. A long time ago he committed something serious, and then on his own he entered the Forbidden Land. Previously Chen Xiang had seen this in the extreme martial sect's books and in the records. He had not expected to actually encounter this guy. The current dean is Gu Dongchen, 15th generation. At this point, he was also very respectful to this old madman in front of him. After all, this old man once was a dean, but he also had killed the beast martial sect's dean. Hey, that little featherhead is but my apprentice grandson, that nameless little girl is my second apprentice granddaughter, and that little bald is my third apprentice grandson. They are all right." Huang Jitian laughed and said. His smile was very amiable. Chen Xiang was very surprised. He had not expected the three type. OONS of the extreme martial sect actually to be this Huang Jitian's apprentice grandchild's. The apprentice of Huang Jitian's was the teacher of those three Tai. OONS. That nameless little girl is Elder Dan, extreme martial sect's Dan King, little bald is Wu Kaming, both of them are extreme martial sect elders. Just a moment ago I had been kicked down by that old baldy. Chen Xiang angrily said, at this time his S was still paining. Huang Jitian laughed and said, they are simply good, if you take me as your teacher, later on they will become your martial nephew. For a genius like you killing a true disciple is still nothing, you absolutely cannot keep this for long. You have the yin and yang divine vein, so you definitely will be able to learn my dragon slaying divine martial exercise. Chen Xiang in his heart was excited, trying to figure out whether or not take him as his teacher. He then asked Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu inside the ring, to solicit their opinion. Take him as your teacher. You are going to stay here for some time anyway, so you can learn another dragon slaying divine martial exercise. Besides, this senior position can allow you not to be suppressed by others in the extreme martial sect. Su Meiyao said. Huang Jitian looking proudly said, I, Huang Jitian, have taken only one apprentice, and he was the extreme martial sect's 14th generation dean, and the student Serpa, as said his teacher. Now he has ascended to the heaven martial world, and that is the immortal domain from the legends. Just because I've committed a grave crime, I stayed here to repent. Chen Xiang in his heart was surprised and fiercely knelt, Teacher! Seeing Chen Xiang paying respect, Huang Jitian touched his chin and mischievously smiled. This Huang Jitian was very exquisite, and to Chen Xiang's surprise when he was taken in as his apprentice, he actually had to write a contract. Each person wrote on a paper, afterwards dropped blood on it, but they also infused their own unique true qi in it. Chapter 109 Tai Chi Subduing Dragon Divine Exercise. Chapter 109 Tai Chi Subduing Dragon Divine Exercise. After the C.U. Bursum apprentice and master contract was complete, both sides would retain their contracts, which was used to prove that they voluntarily became master and apprentice. Hey, my good apprentice, next I'll pass my most powerful dragon slaying divine martial exercise to you. You just need to study harder. In future you have to seek you great senior brother, and let him take care of you. Huang Jitian laughed, and started tidying his messy hair. Chen Xiang too was brilliantly smiling. Teacher, do those apprentice grandchildren of yours in future have to call me martial uncle? Huang Jitian after thinking patted Chen Xiang's head. You brat, you're good. Originally you had this goal. The seniority cannot be messed with, so of course they have to revere you as their martial uncle. By the way, you cannot expose I'm your teacher, and do not look at me like I'm crazy. I know out there are a lot of people who hate me, and if they came to know you're my apprentice, then you'll be in trouble. Chen Xiang was stunned for a moment, smiled and said, Teacher, originally you were using this place as your refuge? Bah, your teacher is quite powerful, using this place to seek refuge? I'm here to repent and start anew, otherwise I would have already went to that dog's Hi+T immortal domain. Huang Jitian once again patted Chen Xiang's head. You brat, after you go outside do not casually expose you're my apprentice, and although it is very prestigious position, it can be truly troublesome. Chen Xiang pursed his lips, whispered, What is this? Accepting I'm your apprentice, just like a mouse in hiding? Brat, you listen to me, indeed part of the reason for your teacher to be staying here is to escape, but repenting is also true. I'm hiding here, in order to avoid them SN. ATC. Hing my dragon-slaying divine martial exercise. There are various kind of dragon-slaying divine martial exercise, but all of them have 3, 6 or 9 levels, and I have the highest rank. Even all those Hi+TTY immortals want to get it. Huang Jitian seriously said. Chen Xiang was still somewhat doubtful, said, "Teacher, I also have dragon martial technique." Chen Xiang wanted to tell Huang Jitian about the dragon aura technique, only to see Huang Jitian contemptuously saying, "Dragon aura? This kind of dragon martial technique, in my eyes, are all inferior stuff, and only able to play out some of the strength of a no-good little dragon. Truly powerful dragon force, if learned well, can even allow you to kill an adult dragon. Dragon aura can only simulate the dragon breath's chi aura." While speaking, Huang Jitian stretched out his palm, only to see a little whitish ball emerging out from his palm, but as soon as this aura appeared, Chen Xiang immediately felt hundreds of thousands of jin of pressure pounding on him. He was like a small boat in the middle of a storm, and in the blink of an eye he flew far away from the impact of that vast power. Chen Xiang hit the other side of the wall, but his body was actually stuck because of the strong pressure falling on top of his body, making him feel very uncomfortable. He emitted a bray. At the same time he also saw the S.P. A.C. around Huang Jitian's palm actually starting to slightly twist. This was S.P.A.C. distortion. Huang Jitian proudly smiled as he retracted the little ball of whitish aura in his palm. Far away Chen Xiang also fell down into the water, then slowly swam and arrived next to the fire. "Now you see your teacher is formidable." Huang Jitian, looking at the dazed Chen Xiang lying on the ground, laughed and said. At this point there was no strength left in Chen Xiang's whole body. He was lying on the ground panting, and he was completely speechless. In his heart he was very terrified, and he was secretly shocked by his teacher's strength. In his opinion, he was far stronger than the elder Dan. Just a little ball of true qi could create spatial distortion. What would happen if all of his power was released? Chen Xiang did not dare to imagine such a situation, and this might was simply catastrophic. This old man's strength has long transcended the highest peak of the mortal world. Your teacher is a one through and through immortal. He hides inside this particular mysterious realm just to avoid attracting the heavenly realm's power, or else if he went outside, he would be certainly sucked up. Su Meiyao was very surprised too. Bai Yu seriously said, "It seems he was telling the truth. His dragon-slaying divine martial exercise is even envied by people from the heavenly realms. He is hiding here in order to avoid getting hunted down. If he went to the legendary heaven martial world with such strength, that would be very dangerous for him." At this point, although Chen Xiang's whole body was in pain, in his heart he was secretly pleased, because he picked up a cheap teacher who was so formidable. "Little devil, previously what your teacher used was dragon force. It is a very strong power bred by dragons. Isn't it very formidable? If an adult dragon appeared in the mortal world, it only needs to swing his tail, and in the blink of an eye it can destroy the whole mortal world." Huang Jitian's face was full of fear when he mentioned dragons. Huang Jitian went up to Chen Xiang and slapped down a few times on Chen Xiang's body. Chen Xiang only felt a kind of bizarre cool power rush. Plus-ing into his body, making the pain immediately disappear from his body. "I have a yin and yang profound vein, your great senior brother has a yin and yang heaven vein, and you have a yin and yang divine vein. In the future you'll transcend me and your great senior brother. Spiritual vein, profound vein, heaven vein, and divine vein. Each one rarer compared to the predecessor, and more formidable too. The yin and yang veins were even rarer, and Chen Xiang had not expected that both his own teacher and great senior brother, that he had never met, would have yin and yang veins. In the extreme martial sect, those powerful young disciples mostly had profound or heaven veins, but all of them hid it. Chen Xiang reckoned that Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong were profound or heaven vein martial artists. You also have a Tai Chi yin and yang diagram in your dantian, right? Hey, those who have this stuff are most suited to cultivate using the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise." Huang Jitian laughed and said. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu, who heard the word of Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, they could not help but let out a shocked cry. It turned out to be the Oi Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. I had not thought it really existed, Su Meiyao said while shocked. It is said that the Oi Tai Chi divine exercise was branched out from improving the Oi Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. And in the first place, what we have is just a remnant version of it. That's why it is far inferior to the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, Bai Yuyu said while surprised. Huang Jitian with a mischievous smile said, Brat, I'll not ask about your confidential secret, and I know you cultivate other martial arts too. Though they look good, they are not perfect enough, and is likely to be a remnant of the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. But soon you will be able to learn the complete Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. Chen Xiang nodded his head, humbly asked him to teach him. An old man and a youth in the pitch-dark bottomless abyss. The old man, without respite, imparted some martial art mnemonics to the youth, and while doing so both of them were very serious. 1 month went by and Chen Xiang, in order to completely recite the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, he completely carved it into his brain. At this time, he knew how harsh the requirements were to cultivate using the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. First and foremost, one must have yin and yang veins, but there were still many people who wanted to SN/ATC this dragon-slaying divine martial exercise. Even if they could not cultivate it, but from reorganizing it they could also create some powerful martial arts, just like the Oi Tai Chi divine exercise. In Chen Xiang's ring, Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu also memorized the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. And though they could not cultivate it, but they had already started to create martial arts according to this powerful dragon-slaying divine martial exercise. Although this process was very difficult, but residing inside they also had nothing to do, and they had a lot of time on their hands. Memorize, and now I will start correcting your training method. Fortunately you still have not entered the true martial realm, or it would have been too late, Huang Jitian said, and then once again started maniacally laughing. Chapter 110 HELL. Chapter 110 HEL. Chen Xiang was worried that as Huang Jitian was correcting his cultivation, it would result in his strength retrograding too much, and at that time it would do more harm than good. The madly laughing Huang Jitian suddenly turned serious and said, Now I'll teach you. Once you enter the true martial realm, the method of cultivating your true Qi and the method of others will be very different. The Oi Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise covers everything, and after you train well, you can display punching techniques, kicking techniques, palm techniques, knife techniques, sword techniques and such various methods, and they can be hard or soft, cold or hot, quick or slow. Your external strength and internal strength, in the same way, can transform true Qi into dragon force, and the power released will be same as what you've seen before. I first want to talk about the true martial realm, and the cultivation of the true martial realm. If you constantly absorb the world spirit Qi, you will be able to refine it into true Qi, then compress it inside the dantian. After the true Qi is extruded, the quality of the true Qi can improve, thereby the released power will be much greater. After achieving the late period of the true martial realm, the true form congealed out would be about September 9th, 81, but as we cultivate 5 elements of true Qi, so the congealed true Qi forms are even 5 times more than the others. Chen Xiang also knew about this. After achieving the true martial realm, the cultivator has to congeal out 9 true Qi forms in total, and afterwards the congealed 9 true Qi forms would be fused into one form. After this, the fusion of the true Qi forms would become the foundation of the other congealed out true Qi forms. Then they would have to once again congeal out 8 more true forms of same quality, then those 9 true Qi forms are once again fused. Every time the true Qi forms were fused it was counted as one level. The true martial realm altogether had 9 levels, and the further level that was achieved, the harder it was to advance. Huang Jitian paused, then continued speaking, but our cultivation method is different. We, unlike the majority, do not have to compress the congealed-out true qi forms, but we light each and every true element grain of those 5 true qi forms in our dantian. TLN. As was previously wrote by author, when true qi forms were congealed, they were made up of countless rice-sized grains made of true qi. Those grains are here called true element grains. So to say, you currently should have 5 lifelike true qi forms in your dantian. If you correctly cultivate using the Wutai Qi subduing dragon divine exercise, then when you achieve the true martial realm, you'll be able to clearly see the inside of those 5 true qi forms. Their insides are composed of countless true element grains, and a true element grain is equal to 1 true qi form. At that time you just have to constantly absorb true qi, to light up those dim true element grains, and if a true element grain lit up once, then it is equivalent to 1 true form being congealed. Chen Xiang nodded his head and said, as long as 9 of the true element grains inside those 5 true qi forms are lit, it can be counted as breaking away from the true martial realm. Chen Xiang of course was fearless regarding hards. Tai plus PS, and the so-called cultivating method of Huang Jitian's also made Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu move. This method avoided the tedious process of fusion. Later, horrible screams of a human were always being transmitted one after the other from below the sinkhole, and these screams lasted a whole year. Chen Xiang totally had not expected the so-called process would turn out to be Huang Jitian pouring his supreme master's power into his dantian, and casually fiddle around in his dantian, casually attempting and finally seeking the so-called method. Before Chen Xiang saw his own cheap teacher confidently and calmly speak of correcting him, so he thought he had a very good method, but who knew he would actually be tricked? It was actually by various attempts and slow exploration that it would then be successful. This 1 year for Chen Xiang was the same as H.E.L.L. Along with one maniacal laughter being transmitted, Chen Xiang finally let loose a deep breath, because his insane teacher's attempt was finally successful on him, which was not nullifying his cultivation, but correcting his way of cultivating. Teacher, how can you be so rash and attempt it on me? If 1 in a million chance you failed? Chen Xiang said with a bitter smile. This year, he was like a mold of clay, and he allowed this crazy old man to knead him as he wished. Huang Jitian laughed. How can I fail? Was it not successful? Chen Xiang clenched his teeth and scolded. If 1 in a million chance you failed? Is it that you have not at all thought what would happen to me if you had failed? Chen Xiang imagined the case, and in his heart he had a lingering fear because if he failed, then maybe he would be crippled. Bulls. H.I. plus T. I cannot fail, so why should I think? Huang Jitian reproached him, which made Chen Xiang stamp in rage. He decided in the future he would not mingle with this crazy old man again. This Huang Jitian used power that transcended the mortal world, and Chen Xiang could not afford to play with him. Chen Xiang, while looking at the 5 gloomy divine beasts' forms in his dantian, in his heart he was very shocked. In all of these 5 gloomy divine beast forms, there was very small lit true element grain. This was made by compression of his 10th level mortal martial realm's true qi, and if he wanted to completely light up the 5 divine beast forms, then he needed to congeal and light up countless true element grains. Thinking about this point, in his heart he was very shocked. Teacher, you have completely lit all the true qi forms, no? Chen Xiang asked. If I had completely lit them all up, I would not be staying here. I've only lit a paw of my 5 beast forms. Huang Jitian replied. A paw that needed tens of thousands of true element grains. How did he congeal that many true element grains? Chen Xiang had cultivated for so long, and was only able to congeal out 5 grains. Okay, now that your cultivation method is corrected, in the future you just have to follow the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. for your cultivation, and you can cohesion out the dragon force, but still you should not use it. Generally you should use those inferior qi aura stuff. Huang Jitian strongly urged. The cultivation method of the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, and the Tai Chi divine exercise, was just about the same, but in the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, there were many external skills, and some of these moves were very profound, but if used they were very formidable. Of course, it would not have any effect on his previous, divine exercise of 4 symbols. Besides, this time his true qi was also much more vigorous. 1 year, and this father is already 18-year-old. Although only a year, but I feel like I've lived more than 100 years. Chen Xiang muttered, and in this 1 year, he had suffered terribly. After you leave, besides my 3 apprentice grandsons, you absolutely can not tell other people that you're my apprentice, said Huang Jitian while his old face was gloomy. Old man, you don't need to worry, I'll definitely remember, said Chen Xiang while curling his lips. Besides, can I still leave now? I still do not know how long the dean went into closed-door training for. By the way, teacher, what background does that elder Dan have in the end? No name, I do not know how she looks, but her alchemy is very formidable. Chen Xiang asked, and in this 1 year he asked this every time, but Huang Jitian said that he would tell him after he was successful. She is from the Purple Moon world. She has the Purple Moon fire spirit, and she is a alchemy genius. She might have been hunted down by someone or something in the Purple Moon world, and as she was not able to go on, so she came here to escape, and does not want to expose herself, but now she is your martial nephew. Huang Jitian seriously said, and although he was usually maniac, but regarding some things he was extremely cautious. Chen Xiang secretly smiled. The extreme martial sex 3 Tai O and S were his martial nephews. How cool was this, and while he was getting self-satisfied, Huang Jitian fiercely knocked on his head, making him loudly yell. Seize this time to cultivate. You have to make all those 5 true element grains in the 5 divine beasts' forms to become brighter. Once you have lit them to the extreme, you would have entered the true martial realm. Huang Jitian scolded. Chen Xiang looked at the 5 beasts' forms in his dantian, and found that those 5 true element grains' aura was indeed somewhat weak. He could see that he was still a step away from the true martial realm. Below here, Chen Xiang did not had any thoughts regarding alchemy, and fortunately the spirit qi here was very rich. Apart from exercising, he had nothing else to do, and not to mention his insane teacher was staring at him all day. Once he showed any laziness he would be hit. Once again a year passed, and Chen Xiang finally completely lit the azure dragon and vermilion bird true forms true element grain, already lighting them up to the extreme. So he began to cultivate the white tiger form. Just then he heard a sound resounding in his ear. Chen Xiang, you can come up, however, you must find a way to come up on your own, for this forbidden land restriction has already been lifted. This voice belonged to Wu Kaming. Chapter 111 Young Martial Uncle. Chapter 111 Young Martial Uncle. After entering this sinkhole in the Forbidden Land, anyone wanting to fly up would be deprived of their strength. This was true even for Huang Jitian, and now, the large formation inside the Forbidden Land was being controlled by the Dean, and Chen Xiang could fly up since his restrictions have been removed. Upon finding out that he could leave, Chen Xiang was very happy in his heart. He did not want to spend his whole life in this dark place. Teacher, I. Before Chen Xiang could even finish his sentence, he felt some pain in his S as his body flew up. He found out to his surprise that he was kicked up in the air by Huang Jitian. Chen Xiang had already given a lot of thought to what he was going to say upon parting. There were going to be some comforting and touching words, but now, he no longer planned to do so because being kicked up by his own teacher made him angry. With that, Chen Xiang flew out from the sinkhole at an extremely quick speed before falling on the ground. When he came down, He was kicked, and now when it was time to leave, he was kicked once again, which left him somewhat dumbfounded. Chen Xiang saw an old bald man with white beard and a happy smile coming towards him. Wu Keiming said, "Great! I did not expect that you will be able to come out." Wu Keiming was followed by a handsome young man who had an extraordinary bearing. This young man was dressed in a grey robe and had a small unenthusiastic smile hanging on his face. His face gave a vicissitudes and majestic aura which did not match his appearance. Chen Xiang could see with one glance that this must be the incumbent dean of extreme martial sect, Gu Dongchen. Hey, not going to salute the dean?" Wu Keiming laughed and said. Chen Xiang had not thought that the dean would actually have an appearance of a young and handsome man. He suddenly felt that among the extreme martial sect's top 10 handsome men, the dean would be placed first. Chen Xiang looked all around, stood up and sorted out some dust on his body, and faintly smiled. "Guess who I saw down below? Still with the guessing? Of course. It should be that insane old man? You can actually laugh now. Did he not torture you?" Gu Dongchen's brow slightly wrinkled, because Chen Xiang did not even greet him, and from his posture, he could tell that Chen Xiang didn't had any intention to salute. Chen Xiang said with a smug smile on his face, "That insane old man took me as his apprentice. According to seniority, shouldn't you be the one saluting me and calling me martial uncle?" Wu Keiming and Gu Dongchen could not help but become shocked, yet they were still somewhat doubtful. Just as Gu Dongchen was about to speak, Chen Xiang pulled out the master and apprentice contract. "You see, I'm not lying to you," Chen Xiang said while grinning. On the other hand, Wu Keiming and Gu Dongchen cursed constantly in their hearts after seeing the contract. If not for them being adamant about maintaining their image, then Chen Xiang would have definitely heard many rich curse words. "Rest assured in the circumstances that we are in the presence of outsiders, I will call you dean and elder respectively, but in private you still have to call me martial uncle." Chen Xiang loudly laughed. His laughter was very much like Huang Jitian's insane laughter. This made Wu Keiming and Gu Dongchen could not wait to slap him to death. Though in their hearts they cursed Chen Xiang and Huang Jitian, but both at the same time were also similarly surprised. They both knew how hard the Huang Jitian's requirements were for receiving a new apprentice was. Besides, his only disciple was too great. At a very young age, he had ascended to the heaven realm and had superb strength which even Serpa, as said his teacher. In the Qinwu mainland, he was a legend. Of course, as they are Huang Jitian's grand disciples and knew Huang Jitian's matter, their heart were secretly palpitating. They imagined that Chen Xiang had also obtained Huang Jitian's supreme divine exercise. Unfortunately, they were unable to cultivate using that divine exercise, otherwise they would have already learned it. Tielin, apprentice grandson changed to grand disciples. Whether it was Huang Jitian or their teacher, all of them were very excellent, and Gu Dongchen and Wu Keiming very much respected these two elders. But now they had to call a brat less than 20-year-old martial uncle. It was extremely difficult for them to open their mouths and call him martial uncle. Of course, they still had to acknowledge Chen Xiang's seniority. Chen Xiang, with hands behind his back, posed like an elder as he looked at Gu Dongchen and Wu Keiming. If anyone else had done so, they would have already turned into a puff of smoke. "If you do not acknowledge me, forget it. Even if I meet great senior brother in the future, I absolutely would not mention it to him. Even if I accidentally mention it, I'll also make sure that he does not blame you." Chen Xiang shook his head and sighed, said with a strong sense of righteousness. This made Gu Dongchen and Wu Keiming desire to pummel Chen Xiang even greater. Wu Keiming was the first to admit defeat. Perhaps in the future he would also be able to go to the heaven realm. If at that time Chen Xiang informed it to their teacher, then he would definitely suffer a lot of hards. H+P, because their teacher was very strict with them. "Young martial uncle, are you happy now?" Elder Wu said, and then with a bitter smile looked at Gu Dongchen. "If we had known this earlier, then we definitely would not have released you, and would have left you to stay with that insane old man down below for countless years. Gu Dongchen coldly snorted. Young martial uncle, now that are you pleased, wait for Elder Dan to come out. Let's see how she deals with you. Chen Xiang had a mischievous smile hanging on his face. Although they had called him young martial uncle, but this had completely satisfied his sense of superiority. He could make extreme martial sex Dean call him so. This made him feel cool and earth-shaking. That is a matter of future, rest assured, no matter what, whether she acknowledges me or not, but in the end you are all my martial nephews. Chen Xiang loudly laughed and said, ha ha ha. Little bald, little featherhead. Wu Kaming grimaced in anger. Only his teacher and that insane old man dared to call him with such a nickname. Gu Dongchen also remained silent. A not even 20 years old little rascal actually dared to clamor in front of them. They couldn't wait to stick their foot on his ass and make Chen Xiang fall into the sinkhole once again, allowing him to continue to accept the torture dished out by Huang Jitian. In order to not to call Chen Xiang martial uncle, Wu Kaming and Gu Dongchen both walked very quickly, in a second disappearing from the mysterious realm. While Chen Xiang on the other hand left the mysterious realm leisurely, and then returned to that 500th martial courtyard. After seeing the sunlight, it made him feel as if he was reborn once again. His mood became happy, and after he was tortured in that hellish forbidden land, his strength had also substantially elevated. Martial Courtyard was just as deserted as it was 2 years ago, not one silhouette was visible. While waiting for Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong, he could only lie down on the bench within an arbor and bask in the sun. After coming back, Chen Xiang only knew Wu Kaming was responsible for the inner courtyard's second assessment of the disciples, so there are a lot more disciples entering the inner sect, but disciples entering 500th martial courtyard are still few, because those who came all had more options to choose as compared with previous 329 courtyard. Is anyone here? Quickly come out. One very arrogant sound came, but it was that of a girl's. Chen Xiang obviously heard it, but he chose to ignore it. He pretended to be asleep lying on the arbor's bench. He wanted to look what this woman was going to do. He soon discovered it was not just one girl, but a large group of girls. All of them looked very pretty, but Chen Xiang still did not move. Humph, 3 wastrel occupying such a big place, it is simply a waste. Today we're here to seize this courtyard, letting our junior sisters and brothers to settle here. One of the leading girls said, her tone was briming with pride, as if she was the boss of this group. Big sister, there is someone here. One female pointed at Chen Xiang's location. Tianlin, the female is calling here as her gang leader. Not elder sister. After discovering Chen Xiang, everyone went to Chen Xiang with a torrential imposing manner. It looked as if they will surround Chen Xiang and ruthlessly beat him up. If it was someone else who had been surrounded by 100 people, he would already wet his pants, but Chen Xiang still pretended to sleep with a rhythmic snoring. Hey, get up! Do you know who came? Said one girl while putting up a high and mighty act. Chen Xiang didn't know, but previously he caught sight of their very beautiful leader in yellow robe, who was much more beautiful compared with the other girls on her side, but in his opinion, she was still a bit lacking compared with Xue Xianxian, Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu. Chen Xiang continued to pretend to be asleep, looking such appearance of his, she could not help but angrily said, no wonder they stayed in this martial courtyard for so long, they only know how to sleep. Finished speaking, she slapped on Chen Xiang's chest. Her momentum was actually not small, but after she smacked down, she only felt a strong attraction sucking her palm, making her palm closely pressed on the right side of Chen Xiang's chest. At this time, Chen Xiang opened his eyes and screamed, You actually dare to molest a man in broad daylight. Where did this bad girl come from? Chapter 112, First Beauty. Chapter 112, First Beauty. In the next moment the girl was shocked. She didn't even know what had happened. The moment she wanted to quickly move her hand away from Chen Xiang's chest, she found to her surprise that she was barely able to somewhat move her fingers. Her palm had been closely sucked in, which gave of the impression that she was kneading Chen Xiang's chest. Still not taking your hand back, how long do you want to touch me? Are you trying to figure out whether or not mine are bigger than yours? Chen Xiang said while pretending to be shy. This made that girl's pretty face suddenly turn very red, as if it was a monkey's ass. The surrounding girls were also rather surprised, as they hadn't expected that this girl would actually act so boldly. She had, in front of so many people, grabbed this handsome man's chest. Not only that, she had been lovingly kneading it. Chen Xiang, seeing that it was the right time, retracted his power, allowing the girl's beautiful hand to leave his chest. When the girl looked around and saw the expression in the eyes of the girls around her, she was at a complete loss. She couldn't even explain what had just happened, which left her rather anxious to cry. She immediately held onto the beautiful yellow-robed girl beside her and cried loudly. What methods did you use in the end, to tease Xiaodai to such an extent? That yellow-robed girl coldly asked, as her face was briming with anger. She could instantly tell that Chen Xiang had intentionally done something. In these 2 years, Chen Xiang's name had long been forgotten. If his name wasn't mentioned, then no one would think of him. I wouldn't dare. However, whenever I sleep, I would cast this strange martial skill to protect myself. If she hadn't acted with such a heavy hand, it would also not have been sucked so tightly. Chen Xiang laughed. Humph, originally it was you. The arrogant girl called Xiaodai suddenly angrily shouted. But when she caught sight of Chen Xiang, who was closely inspecting her expression, she didn't dare to say another word. She was also an inner courtyard disciple, so she was well aware that anyone who had such means, their strength was absolutely not bad. Chen Xiang sighed and said, How is it possible that in these 2 years inner courtyard disciples have become so bad? Do you know who she is? She is Wu Qianqin, the strongest among the top 10 beauties, and even the inner courtyard number 1 disciple Moyuan is respectful towards her. Yet you dare to be so presumptuous. Xiaodai tenderly shouted. Her face had a very proud look, as if she herself was the so-called most beautiful girl in the extreme martial sect. Chen Xiang laughed and said, On what grounds should I be respectful to her? I'm not that oily-head powdered-face little b, itch Moyuan, I'm me. This yellow-robed beauty actually turned out to be the most beautiful woman among the top 10 beauties. She was still the same as 2 years ago. At that time Chen Xiang also had a faint impression of her, and seeing her today, he was definitely far from disappointed, as she was indeed very beautiful. What? You actually dare to say such things about young Master Mo? You're looking for a fight. One girl, as if she was stabbed, sharply shouted, and at the same time also blasted a fist. Unexpectedly, a vigorous water attribute true qi was gathered around her fist. Chen Xiang didn't dodge, instead he allowed her to strike him first. However, when the girl's fist struck Chen Xiang's body, she felt as if her power was like a heavy stone sinking in the sea, as it disappeared without a trace. This was the effect of the Tai Chi subduing dragon exercise. It allowed true qi to softly float on the body's surface the moment that it was activated, which would dissolve the harsh and fierce power of the true qi. With this effect, one would use softness to overcome hardness. I don't wish to fight, woman, but if you squabble again while I'm sleeping, then I'll throw all of you out, one by one. Chen Xiang's smile disappeared, as his voice suddenly turned devoid of emotions. Wu Qianqian's eyebrows were slightly knit. Her strength was also rather impressive, and from a single glance, she could see that Chen Xiang's true qi was quite terrifying. What is your name? Wu Qianqian coldly asked. Chen Xiang. As these 2 words entered her ears, Wu Qianqian was overtaken by surprise and even retreated several steps, as her complexion became serious and had a look of alertness. The others acted likewise, as they too quickly retreated, as if Chen Xiang was some kind of plague. "You're out," Wu Qianqian, while clenching her teeth, said. She had previously heard about Chen Xiang, but she had never actually met him. "I've only just gotten out. But why did you come to this courtyard? If you don't wish to explain, then get the hell out of here." "Hush, I'm going to sleep," Chen Xiang unenthusiastically said. "We wish to use this martial courtyard to train our people," Wu Qianqian said, as her beautiful face was already devoid of any pride. Not only had he once killed a true martial realm martial artist, he had also taken a true martial realm alchemist as his apprentice. In front of him, she had nothing to be proud about. "Sorry, this martial courtyard is barely enough for me and my fellow disciples to use. Please leave," Chen Xiang said as he shook his head. They would usually practice their martial arts in this courtyard, and if it became crowded with people here, then it would obviously be rather inconvenient. These boys and girls couldn't help but be momentarily surprised. Chen Xiang had actually refused the most beautiful girl, Wu Qianqian. Not only that, but when Chen Xiang looked at Wu Qianqian, his expression was as if he was observing a normal person, as not even the slightest change could be found in his expression. Chen Xiang's actions left a seed of hatred in Wu Qianqian's heart. His actions had really shocked her, and she even began to suspect that Chen Xiang was perhaps only interested in other men. "Let's use the most common way to solve anything in the extreme martial sect. Let's compete in martial arts. If I win, you have to agree and let my people live here," Wu Qianqian stubbornly said, despite the rumors stating that Chen Xiang is very strong. However, she believed that she had a chance, as she was also an 18th Martial Courtyard disciple. "What's in it for me? If you don't offer up anything for me, then I quit," Chen Xiang said. He had stayed so long in that lish place that beside getting battered and abused he hadn't done anything. Now that he was facing someone who was of similar strength, he was somewhat tempted to have a little brawl. "A true elemental Dan," Wu Qianqian said as she nibbled her lips. "Good." Chen Xiang immediately complied. In Wu Qianqian's eyes a true elemental Dan is rather precious, however, to Chen Xiang it's nothing more than a jelly bean. Everyone circled around the middle of the square, while Chen Xiang said, "We attack until the other party admits defeat. No weapons are allowed. If you do take your weapon out, then you've already lost." Wu Qianqian understood why he had said this. According to the rumors, when Chen Xiang had killed that true martial realm martial artist, he had obtained a weapon from the heavenly dragon treasure. It was estimated that this weapon was comparable to a level 9 spirit weapon. If weapons were used in this fight, then she would definitely lose. "Start!" a girl on the edge of the square yelled. All of them absolutely admired and wars. Plus Ped Wu Qianqian, and they firmly believed that their big sister would definitely win. An ideal was rosy, but reality was cruel. In her first attack, Wu Qianqian used a rather good martial skill that was powered by her fire true qi. Chen Xiang guessed that this martial skill was around the earth level. It was a set of gorgeous palm techniques. When her palm moved it was similar to an elegant dance, as fire was dancing around her whole body. Scorching hot flames continually gushed out from both of her palms, which caused the onlookers on the edge to loudly cheer. Chen Xiang held both his hands behind his back as he solemnly stood there. He had to admit that while Wu Qianqian's palm technique was indeed very beautiful, enchanting and moving, but while competing, only strength reigned supreme. It didn't matter whether your moves looked good or bad, all that mattered was how cruel it was. Only this determined how easy it was to kill your opponent. Wu Qianqian was similar to a dexterous swallow, as she was continuously smacking both her palms, which were metamorphosed into limitless delicate fire palms, towards Chen Xiang. In the blink of an eye, one after another scorching qi waves spread in all directions and completely covered Chen Xiang. Everyone thought that Chen Xiang would be badly scarred. Or even worse. However, after the fire palms struck on Chen Xiang's body, everyone felt like they were dreaming. These fire palms indeed struck on Chen Xiang's body, but Chen Xiang remained standing stoically. It looked as if these fire palms were destroying a steady giant mountain. However, when the fire palms finally disappeared, everyone was able to see that the fire palms hadn't even been able to do so much as scratch the steady giant mountain's clothes. Wu Qianqian was also momentarily surprised, but she quickly recomposed herself and once again initiated an onslaught. Punches and kicks were moving together, as each and every technique of her was using a vigorous qi aura. The spectators took a step back, as they were all profusely sweating due to the intense heat of Wu Qianqian's attacks. But just like her previous attack, it didn't even faze Chen Xiang in the slightest. Chapter 113 Get Together. Chapter 113 Get Together. Chen Xiang had cultivated his body to first level of immortal and devil body. Anyone among the same level, if their strength was not too strong, just by relying on his body he could basically compete with them. At this time, Chen Xiang's skin and bones were like copper and iron. No matter how Wu Qianqian attacked him, it hadn't even done anything to him. Wu Qianqian's fragrant perspiration was already dripping. She had an anxious look as she had already used hundreds of techniques, and each and every technique of her had a very strong qi aura, but still it hadn't fazed Chen Xiang. At this time, Wu Qianqian was panting. She had consumed a lot of her true qi. So she gave up and retreated a few steps. While panting she asked, "Are you in true martial realm?" Chen Xiang slightly smiled and said, "No, but I cultivate in a special way. I only used my true qi to protect my clothes from burning, and used my body to resist your attacks." Physical strength. Wu Qianqian was completely shocked, and her charming body, after realizing, was slightly trembling. Her heart at this time was completely devoid of any arrogance. Chen Xiang had not even used any attack, and she had already admitted defeat. In her opinion, even inner sex number 1 person didn't have this kind of strength. Body cultivation, that was but too difficult. Wu Qianqian clearly knew, for Chen Xiang to reach this step, he must have suffered a lot. When she looked at Chen Xiang, her eyes were full of reverence. Respect the strong, this was the norm of the world where only strength was respected. "I lost." Wu Qianqian bowed her head and softly said. She did not dare to look at Chen Xiang. She now knew why from the beginning Chen Xiang had a plain look in his eyes when he looked at her, because no matter how pretty she looked, with her strength in the eyes of Chen Xiang she was just an ant. "You can keep the true elemental Dan for yourself. I'm going to be long-winded for this. In your eyes I'm very strong, right? But those above true martial realm are even more stronger. In Qinwu mainland a majority of people are as such, although we have entered the inner courtyard, but in those people's eyes we are still the same as ants. I once was struck by a palm of a true martial realm martial artist, and just with that I had directly lost the battle. If I hadn't escaped fast, I would have already been dead." Chen Xiang clenched his fist, and said with a lot of anger. Wu Qianqian's charming body once again trembled. She had guessed correctly that the true martial realm martial artist, who injured Chen Xiang, was in turn killed by him. Inner courtyard's disciples were indeed nothing in face of that, and then simply had no qualms to be proud of that qualification. They were simply not a match. "Thank you for your advice." Wu Qianqian nibbled her lips and whispered, then took her leave. Chen Xiang mischievously laughed and continued to lie down, waiting for Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao to come back. Once they were back, they were going to fight the first inner courtyard and win it. Not too long after, Chen Xiang saw a fat boy and a teen walking in. They were Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong. 2 years had passed, said, and they had grown up a lot. Zhu Rong became a lot more fatter, and had become big fatty from little fatty. The childishness on Yun Xiaodao's face had faded a lot. He looked a lot more mature now. Chen Xiang himself had turned 19 this year. That kind of immature and innocent aura of his had entirely faded, and now he looked more mature and stable, like a person with a rich experience. Chen Xiang suddenly frowned, because Yun Xiaodao's and Zhu Rong's complexion was not very good, although they had a smile hanging on their face, but they had a complex expression in their eyes. There was anger, helplessness, regret. Elder brother Chen, congratulations in getting out from jail. Let's go to the old place to have a drink. Yun Xiaodao giggled and said. Also it is little rascal Yun's treat, I'm not a child. Zhu Rong smilingly said. If it had been before, Chen Xiang would not have hesitated and happily went for a drink, but he could see both his friends were hiding something from him. Chen Xiang fiercely extended both his hand, grabbing Yun Xiaodao's and Zhu Ron's wrists, as he poured his divine sense into their body, and simultaneously probed the situation of their dantian and their body. Chen Xiang's complexion suddenly became gloomy, because he found out that Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao were both injured, moreover very seriously injured at that. However, they had now stabilized and were slowly recovering. More than 50% of your print. 1. P. Al meridians are broken, all of your bones are cracked, fortunately your dantian is not seriously injured. Otherwise you would have lost all your cultivation and would have become crippled. Chen Xiang released them and seriously said, Is it because of me you were made like this? Chen Xiang's voice became very calm, but while speaking a murderous and furious aura surged out from his body. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong both could clearly see the slaughter qi. Chen Xiang was very furious. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong remained silent, they were wondering whether or not they should tell Chen Xiang how all this happened. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong I knew were not like this. Chen Xiang's brow twitched. His voice became immensely cold. What made them shudder was the fact that this whole martial courtyard was actually slightly shaking. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong could not help but get shocked. They were wondering whether Chen Xiang had entered the true martial realm or not. Chen Xiang was actually so formidable, while he was calm but he still could release such horrifying pressure, which even made them feel very uncomfortable. I'm not going to ask again. If you do not speak, I'll definitely beat the H.E.L. out of you till you open your mouth. Chen Xiang rubbed his fist. On his face flashed a glimpse of ruthlessness. Zhu Rong jumped out of fear. Zhu Rong wiped the sweat from his face, laughingly said, We will speak and that's the end. Since you're so formidable, we are also fearless that you'll go and seek death. Yun Xiaodao's complexion became serious, said, It was the first inner courtyard's disciples, they wounded us. While I and Lao Zhu were returning from our mission, we encountered them on the road. I only spoke a few sentences to them, and they besieged us. Yun Xiaodao's face was briming with anger. Those 5 people were well prepared, intentionally angered little rascal Yun, making us and them have a conflict. The martial courtyard calmed down, but it was still enveloped in a kind of slaughter qi which could make people shudder. Chen Xiang with a deadpan look asked, Was Mo Yuan also there helping those people? That little bitch was leading them, but at that time Squinted Snake saved us. Although that guy is annoying, but at the most crucial moment he came forward, warning Mo Yuan and his group, otherwise we would have been crippled. Yun Xiaodao while grinding his teeth said, The people who sieged us were very strong. Besides Mo Yuan, there were Chang Xingyi, Yin Lin, Lei Qi and Lu Yongming. Mo Yuan and Lei Qi are the children of the 4 major families of extreme martial province, precisely Mo family and Lei family, that's why they dare to act against us, and Yin Lin and Lu Yongming are also children from some great families. Zhu Rong said. Chen Xiang took a long deep breath, retracted his slaughter qi and once again asked, When did this happen? A year ago. Later we didn't go and look for them, our teacher made us stop right there. Both our family regarded it as a minor matter, besides in between 4 families' relations. Hi plus P of benefits exist. If these relations were broken once, the 4 family would lose a lot of profit. Zhu Rong said with a cold snort. Didn't Elder Wu do anything? Chen Xiang secretly despised patriarchs of their families. If it was the Chen family, then no matter how beneficial it was, as long as the family children were being bullied, we must make them pay tenfold. We told him, but he told us to wait for you to come out, and let you resolve this instead of us. He said you will certainly manage it well. Yun Xiaodao helplessly smiled. On Chen Xiang's face appeared a sliver of smile. That being the case, I'll help you resolve this hatred. Let's go and have a drink. Chapter 114, Make Up for Regret. Chapter 114, Make Up for Regret. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong brought Chen Xiang along to their usual hotel. As they arrived at the third floor of that hotel, they even saw Squinted Snake, Su Weilong. Though his appearance was insufferably arrogant, Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong were very grateful to him. Squinted Snake, come drink with us. Yun Xiaodao shouted. Little rascal, I remember telling not to call me like that. Is it that you don't have long-term memory? You deserve to get a beating. Su Weilong gave them a side glance with one eye, then continued speaking. Why should I? Can't you come here? Zhu Rong laughed and said, if we come to you, then you have to pay. If you come with us, then, no matter how much you eat and drink, little rascal Yun is going to pay. Su Weilong faintly smiled. Making this little rascal pay so easily, it's not a bad idea. While speaking, he walked to the table of Chen Xiang's group, before instantly ordering many expensive food and wine. Squinted Snake, thanks a lot for last time. Yun Xiaodao laughed. Humph, if you do not call me that again, then that can be considered as gratitude to me. Su Weilong coldly spoke. Chen Xiang laughed and said, anyway, your family is really useless, and your status in your family is really ordinary. You were beaten, yet your family did not even dare to fart. If it was my family, if they did not give us a proper explanation, then we would give them a proper payback. Su Weilong, after seeing Chen Xiang, was also surprised. He had not expected Chen Xiang to come out so soon, and as long as one was from the extreme martial sect, all of them knew about the Forbidden Land. That was a very frightening place, and even if one had to spend only 2 years there, people would still find it difficult to endure. As long as one is not a true martial disciple, their position will be the same in all families. If you have very high talent, then you'll receive more resources compared to others. However, your family, just for you, absolutely can't cause significant damage to their benefit. Su Weilong sneered and said. Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao could not help but let out a deep sigh, as both of them fully understood. Zhu Rong said, Brother Su, you also can be considered not bad. If you can just change your attitude towards others, that would definitely be very good. Yun Xiaodao also nodded his head and said, yes, why is that every time you look at others your eyes are squinting? It makes others very unhappy. Humph, is that what you think of me? I was born with this. Su Weilong's words made Chen Xiang's group stunned. Just like Chen Xiang and Zhu Rong, Yun Xiaodao was thinking of laughing, but didn't dare to. This made Su Weilong coldly snort once again. Humph, Chen Xiang, do you intend to win against the first-ranked inner courtyard? To tell you the truth, the first-ranked inner courtyard's benefits are very generous, and to keep their own position, they're definitely going to use whatever means possible. Besides, they're relying on the first-ranked inner courtyard name to draw in a lot of people. They deeply care about this because as their force grows, so would their importance within their respective families. Until eventually, they'll receive a piece of land in the family. The major families of the extreme martial province were very huge, and only if one was very strong, were they capable of occupying a piece of land. Are you afraid? Chen Xiang asked. Fearless. After all, I'm not in the first-ranked inner courtyard. The last time I stopped them they expelled me. Su Weilong fiercely drank his glass, while there was a trace of anger in his voice. This Su Weilong was indeed good, but he himself was somewhat arrogant. With his congenital face defect, He would usually give off the impression that he was always arrogant towards any and everyone, as if he was peerless in this world. Come to the 500th Martial Courtyard. Because of these two guys you had to leave the first-ranked inner courtyard. I'll now let you go back. Chen Xiang lifted his wine glass towards him as he spoke these words. Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong also lifted their respective wine glass, welcoming him. I can come, but later this little rascal isn't allowed to call me that again. Su Weilong smiled, but his smile was very weird. The four of them made a toast and emptied their glass. Now, Chen Xiang's group's martial courtyard now had 4 people. Squinted Dragon, where did the 1,000 true Qi Dawn come from last time? That is not a small number. Yun Xiaodao laughed and asked. Tielin, Su Weilong, means dragon humph. All day long you have been giving other people nicknames. If you keep on going like this, compared with me you'll be beaten even more. Su Weilong said with a low snort, which could not help but make Zhu Rong and Chen Xiang laugh. That is what I casually picked up, now I still have more than 1,000. Su Weilong words made Zhu Rong's eyes pop out. Where did you pick it up from? How many? Zhu Rong quickly asked. I found 3,000 of them below the Camel Peak outside the city. Su Weilong words had only just finished, when Zhu Rong already stood up. Looking at his appearance, he was going to rush over there and have a look himself. Don't go, that place has already been turned over and over again, and all of it has been dug out. All that remains is a lake. Su Weilong said. Zhu Rong sat back down and let out a sigh. How come I've not encountered such a good thing? Tomorrow morning I'm going to fight the first-ranked inner courtyard. Chen Xiang said. Need my help? Su Weilong asked. No, I'll go alone. Chen Xiang faintly smiled. This smile of his emitted a lot of confidence, which made Yun Xiaodao and others secretly shocked. Su Weilong sighed and said, You've got to be careful, all 5 of those guys are equal in strength. Mo Yuan had also occupied the top position in the top 10 most handsome list, as well as the top 10 inner martial list. The inner martial list was the strength ranking of the inner courtyard's martial artists. In other words, Mo Yuan was the strongest in the inner courtyards. Chen Xiang looked out of the window and said, The sky is still dark. Let's go now to the first-ranked inner courtyard and pick that 16th nameplate and hang it on our martial courtyard entrance. Chen Xiang believed Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao were beaten just because he challenged the first-ranked inner courtyard 2 years ago, and Mo Yuan feared that in the future he would be defeated by Chen Xiang, so he had only wounded Yun Xiaodao. Moreover, they'd also calculated that the extreme martial sect and their families would both not pursue this matter. Of course, they had originally planned to injure Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong, but who knew that Su Weilong would come in the middle and with a few powerful words, make them give up. Chen Xiang said to go and he went ahead. He had completely finished the wine in his wineglass. Afterwards Zhu Rong, Yun Xiaodao quickly ate their dishes. Humph! The food and wine I ordered still have not come. Su Weilong complained. Meanwhile Yun Xiaodao had already called someone to check out. Squinted Dragon, wait for elder brother Chen to win against the first-ranked inner courtyard, then we will eat a big meal again, that won't be too late. Yun Xiaodao laughed. About Chen Xiang he was very confident and Zhu Rong was also the same because Chen Xiang always did something beyond what they expected. Dusk, the setting sun dyed half of the sky bright red. However, the whole extreme martial sect was in chaos, because Chen Xiang, who had 2 years ago been imprisoned in the Forbidden Land, had come out. To make matters worse, the moment he got out, he went to settle the regret he had from 2 years ago, as he challenged the first-ranked inner courtyard. Yet what was even more shocking to them was the fact that the ante he took out this time was even bigger. It turned out be a palm length of L spirit GRA. No matter where, L spirit GRA. Was very rare, even in the Qinwu 9 provinces. L spirit GRA. S was also very expensive, and so rare that it could not be sought, but could only be discovered by luck. Such a huge temptation made it very difficult for the first-ranked inner courtyard Moyuan to resist. Besides, he also found out that Chen Xiang had come alone to fight. Such a case, if he did not accept the challenge for the first-ranked inner courtyard battle, then people would think that he had stage fright, which would be a very shameful matter. Chapter 115 Challenging the First Rank Inner Courtyard Alone. Chapter 115 Challenging the First Rank Inner Courtyard Alone. Big sister, that guy called Chen Xiang is going to challenge young Master Mo. Are you not going to watch? It's today, and the location is the first-ranked inner courtyard. Wu Xiaodai walked in a room full of elegance, as she spoke towards a yellow-robed girl. Wu Qianqian was slightly surprised, as she knew that Chen Xiang was definitely going to challenge the first-ranked inner courtyard, but she hadn't expected for it to be so soon. Xiaodai, let's go. I definitely have to take a look at how formidable this Chen Xiang is. Wu Xiaodai softly snorted, Humph, that annoying guy is definitely going to be beaten black and blue by young Master Mo. Today, I'll be able to get back at him and escape from my embarrassment. Wu Qianqian chuckled and said, You little girl can get all the benefits you wish for from other people. Alright, let's go. Wu Xiaodai wrinkled her nose, stamped her foot and softly snorted. When she thought of how she'd grabbed Chen Xiang's chest, her pretty face couldn't help but turn red. At the elder courtyard inside the mysterious realm, Wu Kaming smiled and said, Dean, you decide whether or not we'll go and join in on the fun. Let's finally take a look at the young martial uncle and see how he'll win. He actually challenged the entire first-ranked inner courtyard alone. Gu Dongchen mischievously smiled and said, Of course we'll go, and I really hope that he'll lose. At that time we can make some fun at his expense, and we'll see then if he can still be so arrogant in front of us. Gu Dongchen and Wu Kaming left the mysterious realm, before arriving on top of a 50-floor high tower, looking far away at that huge area of the first-ranked inner courtyard. After having disappeared for 2 years, Chen Xiang had finally resurfaced and immediately made such an earth-shattering event occur. Everyone could instantly recall his name, and he soon regained some of his fame inside the extreme martial sect. Chen Xiang was not only a celebrity in the extreme martial sect. He also had a small reputation in the extreme martial province, because he had killed a beast martial sect true disciple. Afterwards, the beast martial sect had put a bounty of 100,000 crystal stones on his head, which was a rather large sum of money for most martial artists. In order to obtain this reward, many of them had investigated Chen Xiang's origin. Mo Yuan, with the other 9 first-ranked inner courtyard's members, stood in the middle of the huge square of the first-ranked inner courtyard with Chen Xiang. Thousands of inner and outer sect disciples were standing behind Mo Yuan and the other 9. These thousands of people had all been drawn in by the influence of the 10 people in front of them. On the other side, behind Chen Xiang were only 3 people, Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and Su Weilong. Mo Yuan still looked decent as he slightly smiled and said, I didn't expect you, Su Weilong, to actually mix in with them. But the bigger surprise today is that you came here to fight all of us, alone. You also didn't expect for there to be so many people. Chen Xiang also slightly smiled as he replied. The square was surrounded by a lot of lively people who came here to watch. Even some celebrities were within this crowd, such as the top 10 beauties, the top 10 most handsome males, and even some true martial realm martial artists. At this time, Zhu Rong patted Chen Xiang's shoulder, leaned next to his ear and said, Young brother Chen, you see that lovely little girl over there? She is my younger sister, Zhu Ru. Chen Xiang took a side glance, and saw a girl wearing a light pink skirt standing among a group of girls. Although the girls beside her were not ugly, but the girl in the light pink skirt was particularly conspicuous, as she was very beautiful. She had a light smile on her cute and pretty face, and her whole body was exuding an elegant temperament, which was very striking. Not bad, But I'm not interested, Chen Xiang whispered. At this time Yun Xiaodao pulled Chen Xiang's sleeves, pointed to a girl wearing a white skirt far away, and whispered, "She is my elder sister, and she is ranked second among the top 10 beauties, Yun Sui." Chen Xiang once again looked, this time toward Yun Xiaodao's elder sister. This girl was tall, had a mature charm, looked beautiful and elegant, and was completely different from Zhu Rong's younger sister. Zhu Rong's little sister was delicate and pet. 1. Pretty and cute, while Yun Xiaodao's sister was a thoroughly matured girl, with quite a bit of height. Su Weilong cursed, "You came here to look at girls or to fight? If you're not fighting then I'll leave." Mo Yuan and his group were once again trying to maintain their composure, but at this time they were at the end of their rope. They hadn't expected for Chen Xiang, Zhu Rong and these BASTARDS to actually have discussion about girls at this time. They were not at all serious, and it made them feel like they were being underestimated. They didn't know that Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong were trying to introduce their respective elder and younger sister to Chen Xiang. Very beautiful, they're indeed worthy of being on that list. You can go and tell them that if they don't mind me having 3 wives and 4 concubines, then they're welcome to come tonight. This father is still a virgin after all. Chen Xiang said with a sinister smile. Mo Yuan couldn't tolerate it any more and coldly said, "Are you going to fight or not?" "Of course I'm going to fight, but you should tell me the rules first." Chen Xiang dry coughed twice, while Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao, with a look of contempt, looked at Chen Xiang. Mo Yuan said, "Just a moment ago you said you're going to fight, but on our side there are many capable martial artists, and all of them can be counted as members of the first-ranked inner courtyard." Yun Xiaodao was suddenly furious after hearing these words. "Count my ass. Among these people, a lot of them don't even have the qualifications to enter the inner courtyard." Obviously Mo Yuan had some concerns regarding them being defeated by Chen Xiang. So just to be sure, he could only say something like this. Exactly, if they are the first-ranked inner courtyard's members, then the benefits the extreme martial sect would have to pay them alone is enough to choke. "Don't play us for fools," Zhu Rong coldly replied. "I'm the first-ranked inner courtyard's chief. If I say they're then they are. Although they don't receive the first-ranked inner courtyard's disciples' benefits, they do often reside inside the first-ranked inner courtyard. Moreover, they also took part in the extreme martial sect's signed missions, and all of them have completed at least a part of it." Mo Yuan said. Chen Xiang laughed and said, "In other words, after they complete the task, all the rewards they obtained were received by you? No wonder you recruited so many people." Mo Yuan's complexion changed. "If you disagree, then please leave." If Chen Xiang agreed, then he would have to fight 10,000 people. Could a single man do such a thing? Everyone around them also felt that it was somewhat excessive, and if they were in his place, all of them would have disagreed. Just as they thought they weren't going to see the fight happen, they heard Chen Xiang's words. "I'll fight as I meant before, but the premise is that after these 9 are defeated, only then can all of them join the fight." "Yes, but their strength is very poor, so all of them will work together and learn from you," Mo Yuan replied. Now Chen Xiang clearly saw through Mo Yuan's hypocritical face, which looked as polite as a pie, but whose heart was full of dirty tricks. To everyone's surprise, Chen Xiang actually agreed. Even if he could win against the 9 members of the first-ranked inner courtyard, those thousands of disciples were also marvelous, and all of their strength was above the 9th level of the mortal martial realm. Even if Chen Xiang was an elephant, and was sieged by so many ants, they still wouldn't be able to predict his chance of victory. "Idiot, what will you do if you lose?" "That is Spirit GRASS. Zhu Rong cursed. Yun Xiaodao viciously looked at the 5 people who besieged him, grinding his teeth and said, "Elder brother Chen, I believe that you'll definitely make them pay for what they did. Wait for the day when I have the strength, at that time I'll kill all of them." Yun Xiaodao spoke these ruthless words, before he walked towards his elder sister, Yun Suyi's location. Zhu Rong also had a look of helplessness, as he also went to his younger sister. You really don't need any help? Su Weilong asked, as he was still standing behind Chen Xiang. No, you should also move back and watch. At the same time, you should try to stay away from this first-ranked inner courtyard. In fact, it would be better if you didn't stay inside the first-ranked inner courtyard at all. Chen Xiang whispered, while a ruthless smile flashed across his face. Deep inside his heart, Su Weilong was secretly shocked by this smile. One more chapter to come. Chapter 116 Sensational Prowess. Chapter 116 Sensational Prowess. This chapter is sponsored by Saskia Paul, D. and anonym Chen Xiang was imprisoned for 2 years in the Forbidden Land, which meant that he had also lost 2 years' worth of benefit. That was why he not only wanted to make the first inner courtyard lose, but he also wanted to make the extreme martial sect lose a little bit. While he was coming, Chen Xiang had learned from Su Weilong that among the first inner courtyard's 9 members only 5 had actually fathomless strength, while the other 4 could be ignored. These 4 intentionally defected to Mo Yuan's group, and Mo Yuan wanted to increase his sphere of influence, so he had allowed them to join in. Chen Xiang could clearly identify with a single glance who these 4 individuals were. He only had to compare the imposing manners of the members of Mo Yuan's group. After all, they were in the hands of their boss, so when he stood in front of them they would obviously restrain themselves. One-on-one, whoever loses cannot fight again. Mo Yuan said. Can I first fight those 4 alone? Chen Xiang directly pointed to the 4 men who hadn't yet spoken a single word, as all 4 of them were very respectful towards the others within Mo Yuan's group. As you Wisconsin H. Plus, Mo Yuan immediately said, You 4 go. Be careful. Chen Xiang was willingly going to fight 4 at the same time, and this made everyone surprised. Here, everyone were martial artists and now they could watch a high-level inner courtyard battle, and this made all of them very excited. The contest had started. Each of the 4 had their body vigorously shake, as they pushed their powerful true qi. At the same time, the true qi of the 4 of them exploded, as qi waves rushed away in all directions, setting off one fierce wind after the other. The onlookers could clearly see that the true qi was very pure, as well as very dense. Indeed worthy of the first inner courtyard. Wu Qianqian's pretty eyes glittered, as she enviously stared at those standing in the field. These first inner courtyard members were the disciples with an immeasurable future. After all, as long as one was strong, they would be wars. Ped by everyone. Each and every one of these 4 men are stronger than Big Sister. That guy called Chen Xiang is definitely going to lose. Wu Xiaodai clenched her jade-white teeth, as she gloatingly said. Suddenly, those 4 men disappeared from their place. This speed caused tens of thousands of disciples around them to exclaim, one after the other, as each and every one of them yearned for this kind of speed. Chen Xiang's eyes rotated, attentively listening to the faint sound, while at the same time he spread out his divine sense, catching the true qi fluctuations in the air around him. The speed of these 4 men were indeed very fast, as they ran back and forth in the square, and their silhouettes were almost invisible. 2 behind me, 1 in front of me, and 1 in the air directly above me. Chen Xiang had been continually aware of their movements, and when they attacked him, he had immediately determined the direction of their attack. Chen Xiang faintly smiled. The true qi within his body operated as he wished. This was the Wu Tai Qi subduing dragon divine exercise, making true qi surge above his skin, achieving a kind of dispelling fearsome power effect. At the same time, also generating something akin to a vortex's suction force, sucking in anyone close to it. Everyone in the square was holding their breath, as they were waiting for the moment when the 4 men would reappear and attack Chen Xiang. Luckily, they didn't have to wait for long, as an exciting scene appeared in front of them. Because the 4 people attacked Chen Xiang respectively from the front, back and above. From the front a hand like a spear tip jabbed right in the middle of Chen Xiang's chest. The two behind each punched with their fists, which were wrapped in vigorous true qi, and struck towards Chen Xiang's back. Meanwhile, a leg of the man in the upper air was falling down, similar to a long spear falling on Chen Xiang's head. These kinds of sudden and extremely powerful attacks. Everyone that was watching this fight in the field was confident that if they were to defend against these moves, they would find it absolutely impossible to do so. Chen Xiang, however, didn't dodge and instead stood fixed there. Then, a strange scene appeared as the four people attacked simultaneously, as fast as lightning and as fierce as thunderbolts. But after they struck Chen Xiang's body, they all froze in their spots. It looked as if they were under some kind of demonic spell, as the four of them were unable to move. Anyone under the true martial realm would find it impossible to fully defend against these attacks and survive. However, Chen Xiang didn't seem to be fazed by the attacks that had hit his body. Even though everyone could clearly see that his chest had been stabbed by a cone-like palm, while another person was standing on top of his head and two fists were closely sticking to his back. Indeed, Chen Xiang was hit, but it didn't do anything to him. Everyone originally had thought that Chen Xiang, even if he had not become meat paste, he would at least vomit a few mouthfuls of blood. But currently, he didn't even have a wrinkle on his brow. The four men who had attacked Chen Xiang were also very much stunned, because after they had used their powerful qi aura to attack, it had felt as if a sword vigorously entered into the water, without generating the smallest of waves. However, what made them even more shocked was that their hands and legs had been plastered to Chen Xiang's body, and that they couldn't even mobilize the true qi within their body. While everyone was shocked and uncertain, Chen Xiang moved. He fiercely blasted his fist forward, hitting the person in front of him. This fist looked like an ordinary fist, however. The moment it hit the person in front of him, he flew 100 or so zhang away. Not only that, but when he was flying away, he was also spurting blood, until he finally crashed into the tiled floor. Just so, Chen Xiang sneered while he let out a shout, only to see his robes suddenly turn into powder, revealing perfectly curved and robust muscles. At the same time, a fiery red mist surged out from within his skin, while at the same time a kind of scorching hot invisible qi surged out in all directions, giving everyone a hard time trying to endure it. At this time, the one who stepped on his head and the two behind him issued blood-curdling screams, as blood gushed out from all three of their mouths, while their faces were twisted due to pain and fear, making them look extremely ferocious. Humph! With a cold snort, a qi wave bursted out from his body. This burst of qi waves gave a big shock to those three men, as they once again spewed a mouthful of blood as they flew away. Chen Xiang had not taken them seriously, as he was just letting them suffer a little bit, so that they wouldn't be able to continue to fight. You five either throw in the towel, or fight me. During the battle, I absolutely won't be lenient. I don't care how blee you are, Chen Xiang said with a deadpan expression. These angry words shook everyone present. Chen Xiang, at this time, was very serious and was also the most terrifying. In the blink of an eye he had defeated 4 first inner courtyard members. This was indeed the kind of power that could make people terror-stricken. Far away Wu Kaming was somewhat concerned and said, "Dean, should we not stop this brat? I fear that he'll continue to ruthlessly act, as he'll probably even start killing the opposite party." "No need, every move of this brat is very calculated, at most he would cripple those guys. You also informed me before what those guys have done, which they must bear their own punishment for," Gu Dongchen said, as he held both his hands behind his back. He had a somewhat solemn look on his face as he looked at Chen Xiang. This brat, just a moment ago, used the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. Teacher had once told me about this move. Only if the gap between the user of this skill and their opponent's true qi is truly large, will the dispelling effect of this exercise be effective. It seems that he did indeed obtain the inheritance of that insane old man. Does this mean that he has the yin and yang? Wu Kaming spoke up to this point, as his eyes were wide open and his whole face had a horrified appearance. Gu Dongchen nodded his head. It should be. I hear he can use a variety of attributed true qi. Flame was Gus. Hi plusing forth out of Qin Xiang's whole body. These flames were as if they were the anger within his heart, raging and burning, giving off the appearance of an angry fire. Oh, who is going to come? One-on-one. Chen Xiang's eyes were slightly narrowed, glancing at the 5 handsome men. All of them were children of famous families in the extreme martial province. Chapter 117 Mercilessly. Chapter 117 Mercilessly. A somewhat chubby yet handsome man came forward. Although they'd seen and gotten an idea of Chen Xiang's strength, they were still devoid of any fear. The man who'd come forward also gave off a very calm appearance, and wore a white luxurious dress. This man was called Chang Xingyi. He was one of the many children from the chief of the extreme martial provinces trade union, and came from a very wealthy family, which was also friendly with many other families. His family had dealings with many small and medium-sized sections. Chang Xingyi took out a sword that was engraved with azure spirit veins. Despite the spirit veins being small in size, when he poured true qi into them, the spirit veins glittered with a beautiful light, giving off the same impression as that of lightning and wind. This was at least a level 4 spirit weapon. A wind and lightning sword. That's a top-grade sword even amongst level 4 spirit weapons. Wu Qianqian said with surprise and a look of envy. Any girl would love to have this kind of beautiful spirit weapon. Beside her, Wu Xiaodiaz pouted and muttered, "Our great beauty, Wu Qianqian, fancies that nasty Chen Xiang. How is that annoying guy so formidable? How was he able to casually deal with those 4 first inner courtyard guys by himself?" Wu Qianqian's pretty face turned rosy as she angrily said, "Little girls don't speak nonsense. Chen Xiang's character is also pretty good. Before, we could only blame ourselves for being too proud and arrogant. We didn't know how to respect others. We didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Fighting with him woke up my ignorant self. Besides, he won against me, but still didn't take my true elemental Dan." Wu Xiaodai stuck her tongue out and no longer spoke. She just kept looking at the beautiful spirit weapon that was in Chang Xingyi's hand. Chen Xiang knew that this kind of top-grade spirit weapon was worth a lot. Even if, by itself, it didn't have a large value, if it was taken to be auctioned, it could sell for millions of crystal stones. Chang Xingyi saw everyone surrounding them looking at the spirit weapon with envious gazes, and in his heart he was extremely proud. Towards Chen Xiang, he sneered and said, "When the rules were mentioned, it wasn't mentioned that the use of a spirit weapon was a foul. I heard in the Heaven Dragon treasure house that you got a good spirit weapon." Chen Xiang interrupted him and said, "Rest a.s. Assured, I won't use it to deal it with you. You're not worthy of it. Of course, if you dare to have a life and death fight with me, then I'll use your blood as an offering for the blade. Rampant brat, today I'll teach you a good lesson." While Chen Xingyi was speaking, that wind and lightning sword stabbed towards him. It gave off the impression of the wind's elegant and soft spirit, however it also carried the power and momentum of lightning. Chang Xingyi had a wood attribute, and was capable of using both the wind and the lightning attribute. That was the hard and soft power. If both were combined together, it'd be even more powerful, and having wood element true qi among the 5 elements, Chen Xiang was clearly aware of this. The beautiful wind and lightning sword stabbed like lightning towards the left side of Chen Xiang's chest, but, strangely, Chen Xiang mysteriously extended 2 of his fingers, and closely gripped the sword tip. This light clamp made everyone unable to help but be surprised for a moment. That sword stab, although it had looked elegant and striking, its power was also obvious, but Chen Xiang had so leisurely clamped onto it. Everyone only saw that Chen Xiang had a light smile hanging on his face, before all of a sudden a light red mist overflowed from his 2 fingers, and his fingertips, like scissors, cut off the sword tip. This scene made everyone feel as if a knife had been twisted in their hearts, and also gave them a huge shock. That was a level 4 spirit weapon, but it was cut as if it was paper. Chen Xiang had easily pinched it off, and that expensive wind and lightning sword had been destroyed, making people feel very regretful. Yes, profound aura finger. I hadn't expected that he'd actually learn this kind of terrifying low-grade Earth-level martial skill. An old man shouted with surprise, which very soon spread. Not a single person had expected that Chen Xiang would actually learn this kind of formidable, as well as difficult-to-learn, martial skill. Chang Xingyi was, just a moment ago, immensely proud because of his own wind and lightning sword, but now his complexion had turned extremely ugly, and his eyes were twitching as he gazed at the slowly dimming spirit vein inscribed on the sword blade. The spirit weapon had only been damaged a little bit, yet it was still equivalent to being destroyed completely. Of course, spirit weapons were all very disprosium. Unless they encountered an even better spirit weapon, they were very difficult to damage. Even he hadn't expected that Chen Xiang had actually practiced the profound aura finger, which could possibly be called a divine martial skill of martial skills, and had broken his precious wind and lightning sword with just a clipping gesture. At this time, Chang Xingyi wasn't even capable of spewing blood. He let out a furious roar and rushed toward Chen Xiang. Both of his fists surged with endless azure true qi, lightning flash. Plusing above them, while at the same time, 2 lifelike azure snake heads appeared on top of his fists, and Chen Xingyi struck those hissing snake towards Chen Xiang. When those fists were just 3 feet away from Chen Xiang slammed a palm towards Chen Xingyi, while at the same time azure wind and lightning qi aura gushed above his palm. His palm was very quick, came very suddenly, but after he smacked the air, that palm of his exuded an invisible pressure, and soon formed one invisible giant palm, that covered Chang Xingyi and was moving towards him. A fierce trembling suddenly emerged inside the entirety of the first inner courtyard, only for people to see that the place where Chang Xingyi stood was as if waves were cresting upon it. Dy bricks transformed into pieces as that sudden fierce and earth-shaking power poured into his body. In the blink of an eye, the true qi gathered in his body had been entirely scattered from the shock, and at the same time the bones in his entire body had been cracked, and most of his meridians were also broken into pieces. Yes, the shocking heaven palm! Yun Xiaodao exclaimed. He'd read this martial skill too, but it was too difficult to learn, so he'd given up immediately. Now that he'd seen how powerful this skill was, he couldn't help but secretly suck in a deep breath. The profound aura finger and shocking heaven palm that Chen Xiang had cast were both very hard to learn martial skills. Moreover, the requirements for one's body were also very high. But Chen Xiang could now easily cast them. It could only be explained by the facts that he'd completely grasped these 2 powerful martial skill, and that his body was also very strong. Chang Xingyi was lying on the ground, struggling and constantly vomiting blood. Just a moment ago, when that terrifying power had hit his body, it had made him feel the same as if his body was collapsing in that moment, and when he saw Chen Xiang walking towards him, he couldn't help but look frightened. What was Chen Xiang going to do? Everyone soon got the answer, when they saw Chen Xiang howling, as numerous fist shadow flashed, one after another filled with dense and powerful qi that struck towards Chang Xingyi. Those pair of fists shone with golden light, and a kind of merciless and intense slaughter qi followed along with each fist's strike as they spread out. It was very nauseating to watch. In the blink of an eye, Chen Xiang had blasted hundreds of fists towards Chen Xingyi. He'd used metal white tiger true qi, which gave off a murderous and violent qi aura. Each and every fist of his landed on Chang Xingyi's body, who was still on the ground, causing Chang Xingyi to suddenly burst out, one after another, with heartbreaking, blood-curdling screams. Chen Xiang's fists were very quick. He didn't give others the time to stop him. By the time everyone had regained their spirit, Chang Xingyi had already been hammered by Chen Xiang's strikes into the broken floor. His badly mutilated body was already mixed in with the broken stone, but he wasn't dead. This BLOODY brutal, frightening, and strong attack made fear seep into the hearts of most of the onlookers, while at the same time Chen Xiang in their eyes had become the same as a brutal slaughtering god. Chen Xiang you. Mo Yuan, while looking at Chang Xingyi who was mixed in with the broken stone on the ground, couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Just like the others, it had also made him feel deep fear. Next, Chen Xiang coldly said, and everyone that heard his voice couldn't help but shudder. Wouldn't the next person also be the same as Chang Xingyi, beaten until he could no longer be recognized? Chapter 118 Crazy Means. Chapter 118 Crazy Means, whose slaughtering heart. Not only did this allow Chen Xiang to release a kind of psychic pressure that was capable of captivating other people's mind, at the same time it could also allow him to turn into a cold-blooded and resolute killer. It allowed him to fight with no worries, enabling him to completely showcase his full strength. There were many people who during battles, because they had too many worries and idle thoughts, were unable to use their entire strength, but Chen Xiang did not have this limitation. I did not break any rules. If you possess the ability to do so, come and cripple me. Chen Xiang's eyes were full of killing intent, glaring at Mo Yuan and the other four. Chen Xingyi had already been dug out. His body had been mashed into the ground. Soil and stone were mixed in together. It looked very nauseating. A lot of people were already retching. Previously he had displayed the appearance of an imposing, powerful expert, but in just a short period of time he became like this. Chen Xiang's brutal display of force made people deeply fear him. Who's next? I will never show any mercy. I will not let them have the opportunity to throw in the towel. You will be turned into a pile of crushed fleas. Plus, Chen Xiang's ice-cold voice spread throughout the first inner courtyard and was akin to a devil from Hell, making people extremely scared. Previously, Mo Yuan and those other four had truly not placed Chen Xiang in their sights, but now they themselves did not dare go up and fight. They were clearly aware of their own strength. They knew that their own strength could not be much better than Chen Xingyi's. Whoever went up and faced Chen Xiang would most likely face the same fate as that of Chen Xiangyi. Mo Yuan carefully thought about it before his eyes suddenly lit up, saying, I give up. Mo Yuan actually chose to throw in the towel, causing Chen Xiang to be slightly surprised. Other people were also shocked in a similar phase. Many of the girls had a look of disappointment in their eyes after hearing Mo Yuan surrender. In their eyes, he was invincible. Although they were deeply shocked by Chen Xiang's strength, they still believed Mo Yuan would definitely be able to cleanly beat Chen Xiang. At this time, Yin Lin, Lei Qi and Lu Gongming had all admitted defeat. If they fought independently, they would only end up being destroyed. Although they were very concerned about the first inner courtyard, they were even more worried about their own future. If they were crippled, they would be unable to stand and rise up for a very long time, perhaps indefinitely. Previously you said that if we lost, then the people behind me will be allowed to fight, right? Mo Yuan coldly smiled as he lifted one of his hands, made a gesture, and suddenly more than 10,000 disciples behind him simultaneously let out a thunderous roar, filling the entire extreme martial sect. Zhu Rong clenched his fists. This guy looks as polite as pie, but is actually so despicable. Yun Xiaodao had already arrived beside Zhu Rong, prepared to partake. 1p8 in the battle. First inner courtyard's disciples, today we will work together and defeat the person in front of us. Mo Yuan loudly shouted, boosting their morale. This attitude of his caused everyone to secretly curse his shamelessness. Mo Yuan and the remaining four were all secretly proud, because in their opinion it would be impossible for Chen Xiang to defeat all these more than 10,000 people. But what made everyone a bit surprised was that Chen Xiang just calmly said, "Mo Yuan, you didn't fight with me before, do you not regret it? I'll allow you to fight together with them, all of you can come together." Is Chen Xiang crazy? This was what everyone's first thought was, and to their surprise he allowed Mo Yuan and those 4 to come together with those 10,000 disciples. Wasn't he clearly asking for torture? Ha ha! Since you are so kind, I'm not going to refuse you good intentions. Mo Yuan laughed. Everybody let's go. Just as the word go fell, Chen Xiang's body, like an arrow shot from an bow, flew out and appeared in front of Mo Yuan. Mo Yuan was shocked, but quickly mobilized all of his true qi, majority of which was used to create a qi Hi plus ELD for defense. At the same time he poured some of it in his arm, transforming it into overflowing qi aura. Just as Mo Yuan was thinking of striking out with his fist, Chen Xiang quickly opened his mouth, spewing a powerful and violet azure qi aura, transforming in a giant azure column, which not only ruthlessly attacked Mo Yuan, but also struck a group of people coming from behind him, leaving a deep scar on the ground. When that azure qi aura beam landed on that group of people, one by one they let out blood-curdling screams filled with pain. White Tiger Divine Fist. Go die. At the same time slaughter qi rose from Chen Xiang, and both of his fists transformed into 2 huge tiger heads. Like a stampeding storm, each and every one of his fist strikes produced a powerful windstorm, blowing everyone surrounding him away. White Tiger Divine Fist. Strikes landed on Mo Yuan's body like raindrop. Each and every one of his fists extinguished Mo Yuan's life force. Chen Xiang had only punched few dozen fists, which landed on the qi Hi plus ELD covering Mo Yuan's body, and all of his defense crumbled. Mo Yuan emitted a series of horrible shrieks. Chen Xiang's fists were very fast, and in the blink of an eye he threw out hundreds of fists, each fist carrying a very violent power. Dragon Aura Fist. Chen Xiang's fists suddenly became like gold, surging with very frightening qi aura. This punch is for Zhu Rong. Chen Xiang's fist landed on Mo Yuan's cheek, and bursted out with a thunderous explosion, only to see Mo Yuan's bloody teeth fly out. One side of his face had completely sunken in. This is for Xiao Dao. Despite that Mo Yuan had already set out, Chen Xiang once again punched out. All Mo Yuan's 7 apertures bleeding and his whole body was covered in blood. As I said before, I'll not show any mercy. Chen Xiang gathered dragon aura on his leg, and kicked Mo Yuan's abdomen, who flew away, hitting the wall of the martial courtyard. Yin Lin, Lu Yongming, Lei Qi, having seen Chen Xiang's cruel side, didn't dare come out and fight for Chief Mo Yuan's sake. On the contrary, they retreated, taking refuge within the crowd. Although Mo Yuan was defeated, behind him were 10,000 disciples like a tide surging towards Chen Xiang, and these people were even holding sharp weapons in their hands. You are compelling me to use ruthlessness to finish the job? From Chen Xiang's back a red light surged out, and a pair of huge fire wings appeared behind his back. He jumped into the air, and as he beat those vermilion bird fire wing, he was suspended in the air, where everyone could see his whole body exude an azure, mixed with red aura. Fearsome scorching heat as well as a terrifying qi aura burst out from his body. Shocking heaven palm! Chen Xiang roared, and slapped a palm towards the ground from the air. An invisible qi aura violently surged out from his palm, transforming into a terrifying pressure which in turn enveloped everyone. Chen Xiang completely released his own azure dragon and vermilion bird true qi, and used it to form an imprint of shocking heaven palm. At that moment, all of the huge first inner courtyard violently trembled. Fissures appeared on the square one after another, and all of the buildings collapsed. On that huge flat square, in the blink of an eye, like tsunami waves going up and down, Those disciples standing on the ground also became overwhelmed from the powerful chi aura and vomited blood one after another. Shocking heaven palm! Chen Xiang's eyes had turned blood red, blue veins popped out on his forehead, and he channeled all of his anger while furiously roaring once again. Those who were watching the fight had already climbed over the rubble, and with shock and fear ran far away from those fissures. When they heard Chen Xiang was once again about to release that frightening, shocking heaven palm, in their heart they could not help but lament. This time Chen Xiang completely released the divine elephant earth true qi and the white tiger metal true qi. These two frightening and vigorous true qi fused together, and landed on that first inner courtyard. Boom, 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 boom. The shocking heaven palm imprint Chen Xiang had created next, once again made the ground of the first inner courtyard tremble fiercely. Those 10,000 disciples on the ground had already collapsed, many of them covered by the overturned soil. The entire first inner courtyard had already turned into ruins, and those people were all giving off miserable screams one after another. Chen Xiang had almost exhausted his vermilion bird true qi. His vermilion bird fire wing could not last for long, so he swooped down from the sky and landed at the entrance, dug the soil around it and found the 16th-foot number plate, looked at the messy ruins in the rear, coldly snorted, and sped away. Many of them shouted, "Impossible!" In their hearts, in their opinion, only a true martial realm martial artist would be capable of such deeds, but Chen Xiang was not in the true martial realm. Chapter 119 Planting Tree. Chapter 119 Planting Tree. The huge first inner courtyard had been reduced to ruins in a short span of time, while those 10,000 or so disciples who'd originally had aggressive and imposing manners were now crying one by one. They were immersed in bottomless fear. Just a moment ago, Chen Xiang had completely released all of his vigorous true qi to send out a shocking heaven palm strike. Its strength was already extremely terrifying, and in addition to that strike, he released another strike just after it. Any one of the extreme martial sect's younger disciples would have a hard time just resisting the level of frightening qi aura that was produced. Is this something that a human can do? An inner sect disciple rubbed his eyes after they'd witnessed the entire event. Everyone felt a lingering fear that, if they continued to stay here, they too would soon be affected. "Ruru, this brat is formidable." Zhu Rong patted the lovely girl's head and said with a proud smile. "Very formidable. His strength is close to the true martial realm." Zhu Ruru looked at Chen Xiang's Vanis. Hi plussing back using her pair of clean eyes. Slightly smiling, she said, "Brother, you've made a terrific friend." "Of course. Then, elder brother is leaving." Zhu Rong very happily ran towards Chen Xiang. Yun Xiaodao tugged his sister's, Yun Suyi's, clothes. "Elder sister, although he's much younger than you, elder brother Chen wouldn't mind it. If I have the chance, I'll arrange a meeting between you and him." The mature and charming Yun Suyi was still immersed in shock due to those two waves of violent tremors. She sucked in small mouthful of cold air and said, "Forget it, such a person is too frightening. He and I wouldn't be a match." Yun Xiaodao pursed his lips before running towards Chen Xiang. By now, Su Weilong had already been deeply impressed by Chen Xiang's strength, but Su Weilong too had also not shown any weaknesses. Chen Xiang saw Su Weilong dragging an unconscious Yin Lin and Lei Qi along as he arrived beside Chen Xiang. "These two guys wanted to escape, but I stopped them and dealt with them before I tossed them aside like two sacks of feed." "Haha, well done." Chen Xiang laughed. At this moment he clearly looked tired, and one could see that his consumption of true qi had been quite substantial. After Yun Xiaodao kicked Yin Lin and Lei Qi once, he laughed and said, "Come on, let's go and have a drink." Although Chen Xiang was very tired after a few true qi dawn, he was able to restore a lot of his energy, and he left together with Yun Xiaodao and the rest. "Dean, now you see." Wu Kaming had a bitter smile on his face. "What has this brat done? He's actually been so rampant, and has destroyed the entire first inner courtyard. If we want to reconstruct it, it'd require a ton of crystal stones. In addition to this, he also injured so many disciples. Gu Dongchen also smiled bitterly and said, I originally wanted to take a look and see how this brat would be defeated, but I never thought that his strength would be far higher than what we'd summed. As for the reparations, make these disciples pay for it. After all, their families are filthy rich. If it wasn't for Chen Xiang, their young martial uncle, they wouldn't have even bothered to watch this sort of fight. Although in the eyes of many disciples, this battle had been extremely shocking, in the eyes of true martial realm martial artists, it had just been a piece of cake. This was also the reason why battles between those in the true martial realm weren't often seen. If true marital realm martial artists wanted to compete, they would generally go deep into the mountains to fight. Otherwise, the aftershocks from their battle would spread to too many people. Chen Xiang, along with Yun Xiaodao and the others, got drunk. When they finally came back, it was already very late into the night. After returning to the deserted Extreme Dan King courtyard, Chen Xiang took a short break, before he took out a single azure profound fruit. This was a rare herb amongst the materials required for the building foundation Dan. It was very difficult to grow, and it could only be conceived from a few ancient trees. Is it truly impossible for one to grow azure profound fruits? Chen Xiang suddenly had an idea. To be precise, he was planning to use this azure profound fruit to grow a tree. Some spirit herbs require a particular environment to grow in. Take the HELL spirit GRAS. For example, it only appears in places that have a very dense death chi. This azure profound fruit is also conceived from ancient trees, but they don't require a specific environment because all their elements, after passing through the ancient trees, are transformed into a peculiar type of spirit chi. Su Meiyao said to him. Chen Xiang wanted to become a grandmaster alchemist, but the first requirement was for him to have a large number of spirit herbs. Although he resided in the Extreme Dan King courtyard, he was unable to obtain a lot of spirit herbs for alchemy and could only rely on himself to get them. As his strength improved, he'd need to elevate his alchemy skills as well. This was because, in the future, he'd have to heavily rely on dawn. If he could refine more rare dawn, he could use them to draw in strong individuals, and have them do many tasks for him. Chen Xiang had occasionally conceived some dragon's saliva, and had stored it over these past few years. As his strength had elevated, his capacity to accelerate the maturing process of the dragon's saliva had also sped up. He had already collected 5 bottles of dragon saliva, and intended to use all of them to culture the azure profound fruit in order to grow it into a tree. After resting for a whole night, Chen Xiang was full of energy, and had returned to his pinnacle state. He left the Extreme Dan King courtyard, and arrived at the new first inner courtyard. This martial courtyard was originally the 500th martial courtyard, but now, at the entrance, there was a number plate hanging on it that said 16th. Zhu Rong had come early in the morning after waiting for the others, then quickly left together with them to get their sex benefits. The 16th inner courtyard had very generous benefit. 5 true elemental dawn per year, 100 true chi dawn every month, along with 10,000 crystal stones of course. They all knew that their missions would be difficult, but they had this freak Chen Xiang, so all of them weren't worried even a little bit. Since the very moment that they'd received the benefits, the smile that hung on the fat face of Zhu Rong hadn't disappeared. He seemed extremely happy, because from now on, he'd receive 100 true Qi Dawn every month. Su Weilong and Yun Xiaodao were both very kind. As they knew it was all because of Chen Xiang, each of them gave 2 true elemental Dan to Chen Xiang. However, Zhu Rong only gave him 1. Younger brother Chen, you truly are a god of wealth. I wish more and more that you could become my brother-in-law. Haha, maybe one day I'll be able to live inside a house of crystal stones. Zhu Rong was grinning from ear to ear, If you have any missions then, younger brother Chen, you alone can go. It shouldn't be a problem for you. Dead fatty, the fat on your body is only increasing, not decreasing. Looking at your lazy self, I fear that the day you encounter danger, your fat body will drag you down. Yun Xiaodao hummed. Zhu Rong's complexion was as if he didn't even care. He smiled and said, "Little rascal Yun, there's no useless flesh on my body. It's already saved me several times. If I gather true qi in my fat, when people hit me, I simply don't feel any pain." Elder brother Chen, bash 2 fists into him, and then have a look at what happens. Yun Xiaodao said with a smirk. Zhu Rong quickly dodged and said, "Freeze. Chen Xiang isn't included." Chen Xiang laughed and said, "You two guys are truly." "Ah yes, what did your younger and elder sister say? Are they willing to serve me together?" "Forget it, when my younger sister learned that you already had a fiancé, she decisively rejected." Zhu Rong sighed. Regarding this point, he was also very conflicted in his heart. Although he knew it was normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines, when it came to his own younger sister, he disagreed. "My elder sister thinks you're too young for her, and says you're a monster. I'm pretty sure she isn't joking either. She truly has wasted all my good intentions." Yun Xiaodao sighed and said. Chen Xiang smiled, "That's good. If there's a mission A.S. signed to us, just do what you can. If there's anything you can't do, just wait for me to come. I'll be heading into closed-door cultivation for quite some time." Su Weilong said, "I'll also go into closed-door training. Wait for me to come out, I'm sure I'll be able to complete some tasks then." Yun Xiaodao pursed his lips. "Me and Lao Zhu are both injured, and we need some time to recuperate." In this way, everyone from the new first inner martial courtyard needed to do something important. So just like the old 500th martial courtyard, it was once again empty. But this time, no one dared to laugh at them. One more chapter to come. Chapter 120 Azure Profound Fruit Tree. Chapter 120 Azure Profound Fruit Tree. Chen Xiang returned to Extreme Dan King Courtyard, dug a hole inside a small courtyard, and buried an azure profound fruit. Then he started dripping dragon saliva from above. These 5 bottles of dragon saliva were enough for maturing a metal spirit fruit tree. At least it would bear 10 metal spirit fruit. All of the dragon saliva was what he had collected in these 2 years. If he was unsuccessful, then all the dragon saliva would be wasted. Chen Xiang soon spilled the complete bottle. Then using divine sense, he probed the internal situation of the azure profound fruit. He sensed the dragon saliva being slowly digested by the azure profound fruit and releasing some peculiar spirit qi. He knew it required some time to complete. Chen Xiang returned to his room, took out the 10 true elemental dan. Although the true elemental dan was a high-grade spirit-level dan, but for him it did not have too much of an effect. What he needed now was the building foundation dan. But he still swallowed them, and at once he took 3 of them, then began refining their potencies. The price of a true elemental dan was 10 times that of a true qi dan, and the true qi dan could be bought using 5,000 crystal stones. Ordinary inner sect disciples only received 3,000 crystal stones in a year. From this one could know how expensive a true elemental dan was. Besides, these dan were something a sect was required to have, because they could allow the sect's disciples to quickly advance, and were also used as a reward for encouraging disciples. In the blink of an eye 10 days Pius said, Chen Xiang compressed all the true qi obtained from these 10 true elemental dan in the white tiger beast form. But it only made the true element grain inside it a little brighter. It was negligible. From this it could be clearly known how huge of the amount of true qi was needed to compress to enter the true martial realm. In that mysterious realm, abundant in spirit qi, Chen Xiang absorbed the spirit qi for 2 years, and it only let him light up 2 true element grains to the extreme. And that was also with the help on that insane, immortal Huang Jitian. If he had cultivated outside, it would have taken him at least 10 years. He had the yin and yang divine veins, and also cultivated using the Tai Chi subduing dragon exercise. So his absorption of spirit chi was many times faster than the ordinary people. But even after all this, it would take him a lot of time to enter the true martial realm. If it was someone else, without any Dan's help, even after more than 100 years, it would be difficult to advance. Chen Xiang now understood why 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists were a dime in a dozen, but true martial realms martial artists were so meager in number. He had once heard many younger geniuses had entered the 10th level of mortal martial realm, but at last most of them were unable to enter the true martial realm, and eventually died of old age in the 10th level of mortal martial realm. No wonder both Xiao Dao and Lao Zhu had not been taken seriously by their families, because the chance to enter from the 10th level to the true martial realm is very slim. If I progress as I'm now, it would at least take me 15 years to enter the true martial realm, which is too long. Xian, this little girl, has already entered true martial realm 2 years ago. This girl in the end ate what kind of immortal Dan? Chen Xiang, inspecting the 3 dim true element grains inside his dantian, said to himself. I suspect Shui Xian also has divine veins, and she also cultivates using a divine exercise. She is the apprentice of the Empress of the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire, so she must have received quite a large amount of building foundation dawn, that's why she has advanced so quickly. Su Meiyao replied. Chen Xiang obtained all the information of these last 2 years, and he knew Shui Xian had directly went into closed-door training, and Leng Yulan was also getting secret guidance in the secret land of the Icewind Valley. It was very difficult for him to contact either of them. I don't know what time this barbaric woman Elder Dan would come out. I truly want her to help me refine 2 sets of building foundation Dan. Chen Xiang sighed and said, as he suddenly missed this mysterious woman. Some time ago Chen Xiang had heard that the extreme martial sect was very much lacking profound level dawn, and didn't have many of them left as the spirit herbs required for them were very rare. Besides, it was very difficult to refine profound level dawn, and it could easily lead to failure. Even if one painstakingly collected the herbs, because of failure, it would lead to naught. Therefore, many sects martial artists had once accu mulat a large amount of crystal stones, and all of them were planning to go Danxiang Taoyuan. That place was the gathering location of alchemists, and though the profound level dawn were expensive there, but they still had many of them. Even if it was entrusted to some highly reputed alchemists for refining, the failure rate was quite low. It was also the reason why Danxiang Taoyuan was respected by many sections. Frowning, Chen Xiang came to that small courtyard, but he suddenly saw a very small shoot emerging from the soil surface. Ha ha! Successful father from now on will have many azure profound fruit. Chen Xiang loudly laughed in excitement. Don't show off. Su Meiyao lightly snorted, and Chen Xiang too hastily closed his mouth. Chen Xiang had just spent a bottle of dragon saliva, and it made the azure profund fruit sprout, and he still had 4 bottles left. Chen Xiang grabbed another bottle of dragon saliva, and cautiously poured it on top of that shoot. At the same time, using his divine sense, he probed the situation of the sprout. He wanted to see how quickly this sprout absorbed the dragon saliva. But to his surprise, the speed in which it absorbed the dragon saliva was very quick, and in just half an hour's time, it had completely absorbed all of the dragon saliva. Before, the azure profound fruit had taken 10 days to absorb the same amount. The dragon saliva's special power had allowed this shoot to madly absorb the rich spirit chi inside this mysterious realm, and accelerate its own growth. After another half an hour, the sprout now had become a small sapling. At this point Chen Xiang was very excited. If he could get a large number of azure profound fruit, he could sell one of them, and afterwards using the crystal stones he could purchase additional herbs, allowing him to learn how to refine even more high-ranking dawn. According to Su Meiyao, For him to be able to refine a building foundation Dan, he would have to at least be able to refine a high-grade spirit level Dan. Refining a building foundation Dan was not too difficult, but as it had a very good effect and the herbs required for it were very rare, that was why it was counted as a low-grade profound level Dan. Another half an hour went by, and Chun Xiang had spent another bottle of dragon saliva. Now that small tree had already grown up to his waist. The top of the tree was laden with round leaves. The leaves' arteries and veins were extremely clear, which were flowing with azure spirit chi. In the evening all the dragon saliva had been consumed, and the tree was as high as 2 humans combined, 12 feet. Su Meiyao had often said him some knowledge about spirit trees, spirit flowers, and spirit SSES. Chun Xiang was now impressed by the profound azure tree's growth, as the small spirit tree had now become so tall. Moreover, most of the spirit trees were only as high as a human. It would troublesome if Elder Dan sees this. Chun Xiang was now starting to think about how to get away from Elder Dan. After all, this tree looked very marvelous, Hi plus Ning with a peculiar spirit chi making it look very striking. The azure profund tree had not bore any fruits. Till now Chun Xiang had continued to collect the dragon saliva and had already spent every bit of it. Now he had not cultivated, and he was planning to use all of his energy, day and night, to cohesion out dragon saliva. Previously, when he was at the bottom of the sinkhole, because his cultivation was being overseen by Huang Jitian every day, so in those 2 years' time, he was only able to collect 5 bottles of it. But now it was different. He wholeheartedly operated the dragon saliva exercise, and produced dragon saliva. Besides, he was now in the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and the amount of dragon saliva he could cohesion out was very much. In just 5 days he already had a bottle of dragon saliva, but he spent all of it in a moment. 5 days said by, and Chun Xiang had once again spent a bottle on that azure profound tree. The azure profound tree had already blossomed, and its large flowers were glittering with azure light, looking very beautiful, especially at night. This made Chun Xiang extremely excited, as he believed he would be able to usher a great harvest very soon. Although the tree had only 20 flowers, but that was enough. Chun Xiang secretly estimated, his dragon saliva at least had accelerated the azure profund tree maturation by 3,000 years. Once again he had spent a bottle of dragon saliva, and at this time those flowers were now cocked. Oh, Ned, and condensing the fruits, so the tree now absorbed more and more spirit chi. 5 days later, Chun Xiang had once again produced a bottle of dragon saliva, and this time his hands were trembling. He poured the bottle of dragon saliva on the tree, and afterwards looked up. His face was full of excitement as he looked up those flowers which were now like azure lanterns. Time went by a little bit, and Chun Xiang was gazing at the branches. Those azure profound fruits looked like azure gemstones during the night, dazzling like the stars in the sky. Chapter 121 Fragrance City. Chapter 121 Fragrance City. Chun Xiang began jumping in happiness. He was full of excitement with a smile hanging on his face. He would have laughed, but he wanted to remain somewhat low-key. Otherwise, if the elder courtyard's members came now to investigate, it would definitely be bad. Using his quickest speed, he picked the 20 azure profound fruit. These fruits were enough to last his uses for a very long time. Plus, if this tree continued to grow, it could still bear fruit. Perhaps this was the first ever azure profound tree. If I go to some place with dense death chi, would I be able to grow HELL spirit GRASS? Chun Xiang was lying on his bed and secretly got excited as he thought about it. At the same time, he was discussing the possibility with Su Meiyao. I have never tried, after all. HELL spirit GRASS is difficult to locate and very rare. I never came across it naturally, but if there is an opportunity you should definitely try. Su Meiyao replied. All the healing dawn refined using HEL spirit GRAS were very formidable, almost all of them were above the middle grade profound level. If people were to learn that Chen Xiang had grown 20 azure profound fruits in just 20 days, they would definitely be mad with jealousy. This was one of the biggest, most confidential secrets Chen Xiang had. Leaving the extreme Dan King courtyard, Chen Xiang arrived at the 16th Martial Courtyard. He didn't see Yun Xiaodao or the others and, after asking around, he found out they had not yet been signed any missions, so they had all went out to enjoy their own matters. I have to make a trip to Danxiang Taoyuan and pass the test for a level 3 alchemist. Chen Xiang left a note behind before traveling to Danxiang Taoyuan to obtain proof that he was now a level 3 alchemist. A level 3 alchemist was required to understand how to refine 2 different types of middle-grade spirit level dawn at least. For refining, the number of failures allowed within the given time were extremely specific, making sure that the tested alchemists truly deserved this T.I. Chen Xiang wanted this. After all, the T.I. of a level 3 alchemist alone would make others fear him and dissuade many from seeking trouble with him. Danxiang Taoyuan was located in the Taoyuan province. Furthermore, it was quite far away from the extreme martial sect. If one were to take an ordinary horse carriage, it would take them at least a month to reach there. However, Chen Xiang had the vermilion bird fire wings, so he estimated that it would take him around 10 days to reach Danxiang Taoyuan. Danxiang Taoyuan will probably have a Yaojing waiting for you, Su Meiyao said while making fun of him. Tielin, Yaojing, alluring woman or evil spirit who is enchanting and beautiful, Hua Yueyun. Chen Xiang had certainly not ever forgotten about this seductive woman, who could seduce everyone with but a movement from her. Thinking about this woman, to his own surprise, he was inexplicably agitated. Hasn't that Yaojing said her true name was not Hua Yueyun? It may be hard to find her. Does that make you very disappointed? Su Meiyao teased with a soft laugh. If she is truly from Danxiang Taoyuan, I don't think it would be too difficult. Chen Xiang touched his nose. After arriving at the outskirts of Tianmen City, he used his vermilion bird fire wings to fly above the clouds and towards the Taoyuan province. Fragrant City, this was the nearest city before Danxiang Taoyuan. It could also be considered one of the largest cities within the entire Taoyuan province. While walking down the city, Chen Xiang smelled all sorts of different scents. Everywhere he went, he saw many beautiful flowers blooming on various trees and plants. This was truly a beautiful city. Chen Xiang had already flown for 10 days. He crossed a dense, gigantic mountain range that had been filled with danger and finally arrived at this beautiful place. At the moment, he was sitting on a river Saor, and feeling the cool breeze on his skin while watching the trees blooming with purple flowers on the Shore. His mind and soul became very relaxed. Located in the city was a Danxiang Tower, a property belonging to Danxiang Taoyuan. It was extremely large-scale, not only selling various spirit herbs but also many middle-grade and high-grade spirit-level dawn, however they were all very expensive. After asking around the city, Chen Xiang finally learned the location of Danxiang Tower. It turned out to be the 20-floor high giant tower. It occupied a very large area and was a 100-zhang-wide square tower. Standing in the middle of Fragrant City, it was extremely visible and the center of the city. The tower looked ancient, as if it had been standing there for eons. Many vines had grown on top of it, blooming with various colorful flowers. From time to time, a flock of spiritual birds would hover on top of the vine's flowers near the top of the tower, and it seemed like a very warm and beautiful scene. Worthy of the name Fragrant City, it's so fragrant everywhere. No wonder Hua Yueyun, that Yaojing's entire body smelled so wonderful. Chen Xiang muttered. Although he had seen, albeit not very clearly, Hua Yueyun's enchanting and seductive body, his heart could not help but be a little bit moved as he started fantasizing about that seductive Yao Jing. After entering the first floor of Danxiang Tower, Chen Xiang saw many transparent cabinets, and each of them were filled with small jade bottles or boxes. Above each was a label, indicating the name of the dawn. There were many people inside, mostly 9th or 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists, but Chen Xiang could sense that many of the people in the 10th level mortal marital realms had a similar uncommon type of true qi. He inferred from this that they were the hired guards of this tower. Chen Xiang learned from a beautiful shopgirl that among the 20 floors of Danxiang Tower, the first 5 floors at the bottom were specialized in selling dawn. The 6th to 9th floor were used to refine dawn, and the 10th floor was the location of the alchemist's assessment. As for floors 11 to 20, they were either used to grow spirit herbs or the residential location of some of the staff from Danxiang Tower. If I want to sell spirit herbs, which floor should I go to? Chen Xiang asked in a low voice. He intended to dispose of various expensive spirit herbs, and he was sure the buyer would be an important figure of Danxiang Taoyuan. At that time, he could inquire details about Hua Yueyun. Young master, what level of spirit herbs do you wish to sell? That beautiful shopgirl asked with a sweet smile. I want to sell the metal spirit fruit. Chen Xiang lowered his voice and whispered, making the beauty surprised. She saw Chen Xiang appeared to not be joking. Furthermore, she knew that no one dared to joke around with Danxiang Tower before whispering in reply, Young master, please follow me. Metal spirit fruit, even in Danxiang Taoyuan there were only a few, now there was someone here who wished to sell them. Who in the world would be unwilling to buy it? This was the main reason why Chen Xiang soon arrived inside a VIP room. While drinking high-grade spiritual tea, Chen Xiang could not help but emotionally sigh, Ah, good tea. It is amazing and worthy of Danxiang Taoyuan to receive guests with such a great tea. The person who came to discuss the matter with Chen Xiang turned out to be a middle-aged woman. Although she looked ordinary, she had blee temperament and her bearing revealed an almost regal atmosphere, giving off a very good impression. Chen Xiang quickly stood up and saluted her with a smile. After all, this person could be considered his elder. The middle-aged woman was wearing a plain light blue dress, but her regal aura made her more compelling. This was also the reason Chen Xiang was somewhat stiff. Furthermore, he was unable to tell the full strength of this middle-aged woman. There is no need to be so polite, I'm just a steward. Young master can forego the formalities and act as he wishes. That middle-aged woman softly said with a faint smile. She had a very amiable tone. Chen Xiang was sure that this middle-aged woman was someone in the true martial realm. This Danxiang Tower had actually sent such an important person as a guard. You can simply call me Mrs. Li. Can I take a look at the young master's metal spirit fruit? Mrs. Li asked with a slight smile. Hearing her name, Chen Xiang was slightly surprised, asking, Could it be you are the wife of Fragrant City's governor, Li Xiao? Exactly. It seems that young master has just come to Fragrant City. We, husband and wife, are true disciples of Danxiang Taoyuan. Mrs. Li replied. Chen Xiang took out the metal spirit fruit. Just now, he came to understand a little bit more about Fragrant City. The governor and his wife were both in the true martial realm, yet only the governor was famous. For how much does young master intend to sell this metal spirit fruit? Mrs. Li took only a glance before confirming this was indeed a metal spirit fruit. Moreover, it was grown under good conditions, and the spirit qi inside this metal spirit fruit was very verdant. Before coming here, Chen Xiang also learned about the general prices of spirit herbs. This metal spirit fruit was probably worth around 70,000 middle-grade crystal stones. Although it was technically a same-ranked herb as the azure profound fruit, it was 10 times cheaper than its counterpart. Not to mention, if the azure profound fruit was put up for auction, it would sell for an even higher price. Chapter 122 Search for Dragon. Chapter 122 Search for Dragon Tielin. Danxiang means Dan fragrance and Taoyuan means paradise. As it will be confusing, we are not going to change the name, but specified to make it clear 80,000. Chen Xiang said one very fair price, and Mrs. Li nodded her head, then rotated a white jade bracelet on her hand, and with that a storage pouch appeared. These are the 80,000 crystal stone, young master can check it. Mrs. Li slightly smiled. Chen Xiang swept with his divine sense, quickly understood clearly, there really were neatly cut 80,000 middle-grade crystal stones, and contained inside all of them was a rich spirit qi. Usually they were used for cultivation, and it was the most favored method of many low-level martial artists. While the majority of sects used them in arranging some large array or they were embedded in a spirit weapon, they had a very wide range of usage. Mrs., I want to ask you something, whether or not you know about the girl who was sent in the secular world to manage Danxiang Herbal Manor. Chen Xiang asked. Mrs. Li shook her head. I don't know, it was all arranged by the dean personally, even when she came or returned we are not clear. Besides whoever was there only used Huayuan this name. Chen Xiang lightly sighed. If I meet the dean, I'll inquire for the young master, hope that young master can often come. Mrs. Li slightly smiled and said. Chen Xiang gratefully nodded his head. He now had 100,000 crystal stones. This was not a small sum, and he came to Danxiang Tower to buy some spirit herbs. Both the deans of Danxiang Taoyuan and Icewind Valley were very mysterious, and rarely partook. 1p aided in major things, so not many people had seen their faces. But Chen Xiang was certain both the deans of Danxiang Taoyuan and Icewind Valley were females. From seeing that both the stewards of Danxiang Herbal Manor and Danxiang Tower were females, Chen Xiang dared to be sure of this point. The Danxiang Taoyuan's dean and elder Dan. Whether or not they have any relation to each other, Chen Xiang vehemently suspected. Chen Xiang now bought a large number of herbs for refining low-grade and middle-grade spirit-level dawn. Now he first wished to learn how to refine two kinds of low-grade spirit-level dan. One was called gathering spirit powder, and this was the favorite for people with poor spirit veins. After taking it, it could temporarily improve the quality of their spirit vein, and could make the martial artist absorb spirit qi as fast as the martial artists with good spirit veins. It was relatively easy to sell low-grade spirit-level dan. Another one was called the martial element dan, which contained a kind of violent true qi. After swallowing it, it would make the martial artist enter into a violent state, increasing the power released from their true qi. But it also carried side effects with it, and if it was taken continuously, it would be hazardous to the human body. But it was one of the favorite dawn taken by martial artists at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, because while fighting demon beasts, as long as they could increase their strength, even by a little bit they would be able to win. If carefully taken, it had no major side effects. Then there were also the exploding Qi Dan and melting poison Dan, middle-grade spirit-level dawn, and that was what he planned to refine after successfully learning how to refine the low-grade spirit-level dawn. It was said that both the martial element Dan and the gathering spirit powder were relatively easier to refine than true Qi Dan. Besides, they were also not too expensive. One of them could also lay a good foundation. A martial elemental Dan could be bought for 300 crystal stones, while the gathering spirit powder could be bought for 400, and each set of herbs for each dan was also similarly priced. Because after refining each set of herbs, they would be able to yield at least 4 dawn. After successfully refining could one cheaply earn crystal stones. Chen Xiang bought 20 sets of materials for each dan, then left the Danxiang Tower. Because he found that he was being targeted. When he came out from the detention, he came to know a bounty was set by Beast Martial Sect on him. In the entire Qinwu provinces he had a bounty of 100,000 crystal stones. These 100,000 crystal stones were counted as nothing in the eyes of Chen Xiang, but for many people it was a very large number. because it would allow the martial artists to buy a lot of true elemental dawn or true chi dawn, from which they would be able to elevate their strength by a lot. After leaving the Danxiang Tower, Chen Xiang walked towards the outskirts of Fragrant City. He wanted to lead those targeting him to the outside of the city, and if they had any evil intentions, then Chen Xiang would also conveniently act. As long as he didn't encounter any true martial realm level martial artists, Chen Xiang had nothing to fear, even if there were many of them. Just as the city gates were in his sight, a dragon roar suddenly came from a distance. This sudden oncoming sound was deafening, and everyone inside the Fragrant City could heard it clearly. This dragon roar made everyone's eardrums slightly sore from shock, and it was very shocking. Chen Xiang raised his head, looked, and saw in the sky far away from the city gates, there was now a red overcast which was gradually transforming into a dragon, but it only appeared for a short time, and then suddenly disappeared. This vision could be described as earth-shattering, and this sharp dragon roar even made the land slightly tremble, making the fishes in the river writhe, and all the birds resting on the trees in Fragrance City densely flew in the upper air. Everything and everyone was very frightened. Chen Xiang immediately told this situation to Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu. They had also heard the dragon roar previously, and when they came to know about a dragon overcast emerging just after the roar far away in the sky, they could not help but exclaim, "Dragon birth!" Su Meiyao, with excitement as well as with some fear, said, "Dragons appearing in the mortal world was very detrimental for the mortal world. If this dragon became a full adult, it would absolutely be a huge disaster for the mortal world." How could a dragon be born? Chen Xiang walked out of the city, and even he found it difficult to believe. Not clear, but our teacher had once told us that when the dragon had broken the S-A-L of the dragon egg, a dragon overcast would appear in the sky, and it would be accompanied by a dragon roar. A dragonling is born in this way. Bai Yuyu's complexion became gloomy, like she was worried about something. If a dragon is reined in by a wicked person, then it would be troublesome. Su Meiyao's brow wrinkled, and her enchanting face became somewhat pale. Chen Xiang, you should also hurry. You might be able to find the dragon, and as you have learnt the dragon martial technique, it should be much easier for you to rein in the dragon. Rein in a dragon? Are you kidding? That was what Chen Xiang thought, and Chen Xiang didn't believe he could do it. Besides, a large number of people were now running towards that direction. What are you standing there for? Quickly, let's go. Bai Yuyu's cold voice loudly resounded in his ear. Chen Xiang also broke into a gallop, mixed in the crowd inside. He had intended to use a vermilion bird fire wing, but he feared he might be found out by the true martial realm martial artists of the beast martial sect, and at that time they would attack him, and that was not worth it. While he was running, Chen Xiang felt a few true martial realm martial artists' chi fluctuations. As the more time passed, he sensed more and more true martial realm martial artists. Their speed was very fast, and some were even standing on their own spirit weapons and flying at a low altitude. After pouring their true chi into their spirit weapons, one could, by using their divine sense, control their true chi undulations, which would allow the spirit weapon to fly. But with this they could only fly at a low altitude. Once they flew too high, due to some other conditions, they would fall down. Besides, this could only be achieved by using level 7 spirit weapons. In just a short span of time, Chen Xiang discovered more than 30 true martial realm martial artists. As this place was rich in dawn, it could attract many strong martial artists. A large group of people flew towards the location where the red dragon cloud appeared, and most people thought a strange treasure must have appeared in that place, otherwise it absolutely would not cite such a vision. Only Chen Xiang knew that this vision was due a dragonling being born. An hour passed, and everyone came to a very large valley. Currently there was a big light red cloud over this valley, which was left over from the previous cemented dragon. Everyone was searching in this huge valley, but they had not found any other thing. just a zhang-wide pit in the center of the valley, and it appeared as if something burst out from below. "Chen Xiang!" one man suddenly shouted, and everyone was immediately surprised, and as long as someone took part in a day-to-day life, all of them would have heard Chen Xiang's name. Chen Xiang was but worth 100,000 crystal stones. Chen Xiang did not immediately respond, but there was a middle-aged man wearing black robe, with a sheet in his hand, who gradually walked towards him. Chapter 123 Demanding Life Devil Bao. Chapter 123 Demanding Life Devil Bao, you are Chen Xiang, correct? That middle-aged man held up a sheet towards Chen Xiang. On it was a very realistic painting of Chen Xiang's appearance. Although Chen Xiang was now wearing a very common outfit, his eyes, face, nose, and mouth were all very similar. Earlier Chen Xiang had heard that the beast martial sect Ma's distributed portraits of him everywhere, which made him furious. He had just killed a beast martial sect's disciple to save his own life, but now the beast martial sect was posting a high bounty on his head. Now he swore in his heart that one day in the future, he would definitely clear this debt with the beast martial sect. "So you want to kill me to collect the 100,000 crystal stones reward?" Chen Xiang clenched his fist and asked in a heavy tone. Chen Xiang guessed that this middle-aged man in front of him was responsible for sending all those people who were eyeing him previously. By now there were a few thousand martial artists gathered in this valley, and they were mostly all in the mortal martial realm. Although they had not found any treasure, they encountered Chen Xiang, and the 100,000 crystal stones reward was a temptation that was very hard to resist for many of them here. However, none of them had acted and all took a wait and see attitude. Besides, they all knew that Chen Xiang was not easy to deal with. According to the beast martial sect, as long as someone can get your head, they would be able to receive 100,000 crystal stones. However, if you don't resist, I might just leave your corpse intact for the reward. That middle-aged man coldly smiled before retracting the portrait in his hand. The middle-aged man wore a black robe, and a strange true qi was exuding from his whole body. And it differed very much from the people around him. Moreover, Chen Xiang felt that this true qi breath was somewhat similar. "Are you a disciple of the 100 Poison sect?" Chen Xiang coldly asked. The 100 Poison sect was one of the 5 great devil sects. It was also the most feared devil path sect by the martial artists of the Qinwu 9 provinces. Because the 100 Poison sect specialized in the usage of poisons, they could kill anyone invisibly, and after they were dead, they themselves wouldn't know how they died. Really, 100 Poison sect. Hearing these 3 words, the complexion of everyone around suddenly changed. They one after another went far away from Chen Xiang, leaving out even more SPAC, and overseeing everything from far. There were even some people who were afraid of death, and went far away from the valley even more quickly. That middle-aged man in his heart could not help but be surprised, sneered and said, "Worthy of an exceptional figure of the new generation. You truly have a good eyesight." Chen Xiang noticed, few true martial realm martial artists were also overlooking from far away. If it was before, after knowing one was from the 100 Poison sect, he would have been directly hunted down by the righteous sects, but now the true martial realm martial artists had no intention to come out and fight. From this it was perfectly clear they were all interested in watching, and even had the intention to wait for Chen Xiang to be killed. At this time, they also wanted to receive the 100,000 crystal stones by taking out Chen Xiang. 100,000 crystal stones, even for true martial realm martial artists, was not a small amount. 100,000 crystal stones reward, it is definitely mine to grab. That middle-aged man grinned, fiercely waving his palm, only to see countless needles flying towards Chen Xiang. One after another colorless and odorless poisonous qi permeated from these needles. Chen Xiang, after knowing the other party was a 100 Poison sect disciple, he was immediately on alert, because the 100 Poison sect also specialized in usage of hidden weapons. If he could not find where the attack from his hidden weapons came from, then he would certainly be dead. A slight black chi suddenly covered the whole of Chen Xiang's body, and this black chi in the blink of an eye transformed into a clear water covering, wrapping around Chen Xiang. Those piercing poisonous needles plunged into that water chi cover, and suddenly the chi aura on the needles dissipated in the water. This was a kind of hard and soft defensive martial skill that Chen Xiang had just learned. It was called the Black Tortoise Luo Tian cover, and don't see this layer of mild water chi cover as nothing. This cover could withstand very strong powers. Even if 10 mortal realm martial artists of the 10th level attacked it at the same time, they would barely be able to destroy this chi cover. No need to mention the person inside of it. After the needle containing the poison pierced the water chi cover, they were resolved without a trace, and not even a shadow of any of them were seen. This made the middle-aged man dumbstruck. He himself was at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and previously he had fired those poisonous needles with 100% of his power. He had already killed hundreds of 9th and 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists using this move, but Chen Xiang had dispelled it so easily. Although the Black Tortoise Divine Exercise lacked in powerful offense skills, but its defense was abnormally powerful. Moreover, very little true chi was consumed. Chen Xiang had only learnt this skill after entering the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. He continued using the Black Tortoise Tian Luo cover to protect his body, and then leapt towards that middle-aged man. The 100 poison sex martial arts were not strong, however, their poison and hidden weapon were. Chen Xiang's attack was very fast, and not to mention that middle-aged man, even the people watching in the distance didn't have the time to react. Chen Xiang came in front of that middle-aged man. Chen Xiang shot a palm, and the ground fiercely shook, suddenly cracking open. As soon as he acted, Chen Xiang had used the powerful low-grade earth-level martial skill, a shocking heaven palm. His palm carried a powerful shock and true chi in Kampa. Said that middle-aged man's body, and in the blink of an eye emitting a burst of blood mist due to shock. That middle-aged man could clearly feel that inside of his own body his bones and meridians, inch by inch, were shattering like firecrackers. Only those who had been struck by Chen Xiang's attack could clearly feel Chen Xiang's overbearing might. Otherwise, who would have believed that this was the power released at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm? Chen Xiang coldly smiled while he looked at the painful face of the middle-aged man lying on the ground. Just as he thought of beheading him, he saw that middle-aged pull out a pitch-black crossbow. He could clearly see pitch-black crossbow shooting a black arrow, directly stabbing towards his heart. So fast. Chen Xiang subconsciously reinforced Black Tortoise Tian Luo cover S defensive force, and when that arrow shot from the pitch-black crossbow arrived, only a bang sound was heard. The chi cover wrapping around Chen Xiang's body suddenly burst open, and a finger-long short crossbow arrow was suspended in front of Chen Xiang's chest. So close it almost penetrated my heart. Chen Xiang's silhouette flashed, leapt into the air, and fired a palm towards the middle-aged man on the ground. A giant palm cemented from azure true chi appeared, and fiercely pressed on that middle-aged man. The pressure broke everything, and blood and flesh splattered. Chen Xiang took a deep breath, and thinking about that previous quick and sudden crossbow arrow, his heart had a lingering fear. From observing that shot crossbow arrow, he found out it was congealed out of true chi, and was very overbearing. Otherwise, it would not have been able to shatter his powerful Black Tortoise Tian Luo cover. Chen Xiang pulled out that black crossbow from the mutilated remains, and used clean water to wash it. Then he poured his own true chi in it, and saw that the crossbow suddenly congealed a short black arrow. Isn't this the third ranked among the level 7 spirit weapons, demanding life devil bow? From far away a sound came, and this made the onlookers near the center burst into hubbub. A level 7 spirit weapon was very rare, and mostly true martial realm martial artists were in possession of them. Moreover, The top 10 were even more formidable. Chen Xiang in his heart was delighted, as this demanding life devil bow was very easy to use. This was absolutely the best spirit weapon for sinister martial artists, and just as he was about to put it away, a gust of fearsome qi waves pressured down on him from the sky. This true qi was very heavy, as if a big mountain fiercely befell on him, ruthlessly pounding on Chen Xiang's body. In that moment, Chen Xiang only felt his own internal organs inside his own body being squeezed together. Then his whole body cracked, making him spew a mouthful of blood, and then he fell on the ground. Someone attacked him, but it was also someone at the true martial realm. Chen Xiang immediately thought, this attacker must have been someone who wanted to obtain this demanding life devil bow. Chapter 124 Liao Xiaoyun. Chapter 124 Liao Xiaoyun. One handsome young man, wearing a beautiful blue robe, slowly descended from the sky, stood in front of Chen Xiang and bent over, extending his hand towards that demanding life devil bow. After he saw the devil bow slowly rise, and sucked towards that young man's hand, Chen Xiang looked up and glared at the young man with fire gusts plussing out from his eyes. He wanted to deeply ingrain this young man's appearance into his own mind. As long as he does not die, he would definitely make this young man pay tenfold, no 100-fold. Seeing the monstrous anger within Chen Xiang's eyes, the young man only slightly smiled in response. Chen Xiang, now mortal martial realm martial artists are actually worth 100,000 crystal stones. To think mortal martial realm martial artists are now so valuable that one brat could actually be worth so much. I took this demanding life bow, but don't think I'm robbing you. I'm only taking it because it is a devil weapons, and in your hands it would be harmful for the entire martial arts community. On what basis? If you want to confiscate it, you would have to wait for your turn. At the very least, our extreme martial sect dean needs to speak first. Chen Xiang said while grinding his teeth. Based on the fact that right now, I alone can stomp all over you. That young man contemptuously smiled and stepped down on Chen Xiang's head, burying his face in dirt. Chen Xiang felt like his heart was bleeding. He and that young man had never met before this, but because the other party was currently stronger he was stepped on, trampling all over his dignity. Mortal martial realm martial artists, in the face of those in the true martial realm, were nothing more than ants. This time around, Chen Xiang was seriously injured, yet both his hands stubbornly grabbed a handful of soil while he struggled to lift his head. Glaring up at that young man, he asked through grinded teeth, his voice full of resentment, "What is your name?" "True martial sect, Liao Xiaoyun." "Why, do you want to take revenge?" "I'm afraid you will not have that opportunity. I'll take you to Beast Martial Sect and receive the reward." Liao Xiaoyun sneered before once again vigorously stepping down on Chen Xiang's head. At this moment an endless hatred was born in Chen Xiang's heart. To once safeguard and maintain his dignity, although he was nothing more than an ant in the eye of experts, he did not hesitate at all to oppose and defy Elder Dan. Although he was successful that time, it was on the premise that Elder Dan did not act with a heavy hand. If you don't have the strength, how could you talk about dignity? If you had enough strength, you could obtain everything and your dignity would never be able to be trampled on by others. Never would you have to worry about losing your life. I want to become stronger. This was Chen Xiang's only thought. Afterwards he could have his revenge. Chen Xiang's strength came out of nowhere as he once again lifted his head. By this point, the soil in his hands had already been reduced to powder as blue veins bulged out on both of his fists. He had a grim look on his face, and each and every word of his was like a knife. "Liao Xiaoyun, I, Chen Xiang, had no injustice or hatred with you. However, you still act and treat me like this. I swear, if I, Chen Xiang, do not die then you will. I'll make you pay 100. No, 1,000 times over. I will not only utterly destroy you, but also decimate the true martial sect behind you into mere rubble." His voice contained bottomless hatred accompanied by a monstrous slaughter chi that was being released from his entire body, and people could not help but shudder from it. Humph, you do not have this opportunity. However, just as Liao Xiaoyun finished speaking, his complexion fiercely changed. A big pool of water had suddenly appeared underneath Chen Xiang's body as he escaped into the water. Everyone sucked in a mouthful of cold air. To their surprise, Chen Xiang had actually escaped. From the ruthless words Chen Xiang had just spoke, body had a single doubt in their minds that with time, Chen Xiang would definitely become a huge problem for the true martial sect. Chen Xiang had casted water escape and gotten away. Liao Xiaoyun had blasted a few palm blows and cleaved open the earth, creating giant deep pits, yet not even a hint of Chen Xiang could be found. Beast martial sect, true martial sect. Just wait and see what happens. Chen Xiang clenched his fists and viciously said while floating down a river's side. Oh, well, make a good recovery. Su Meiyao didn't know what to say. Quickly enter the true martial realm. At that time, I can pass down my supreme devil skills. You could make those sanctimonious guys suffer in agony, making their fates worse than death, make them regret ever being born into this world. Bai Yuyu's voice was also filled with slaughter chi, extremely cold and piercing. It was perfectly clear that she was furious on Chen Xiang's behalf, making him feel very warm in his heart. Once again, I'm letting you down. Chen Xiang climbed Ian took a white jade dan out from a box and swallowed. His injuries were very serious and needed quite some time before he could recover. It's nothing, you came out for experience, who hasn't encountered these sort of things. As long as you're not dead, everything's fine. Relying on your wealth, only time is required for I and junior sister to make you into a peerless martial artist. Bai Yuyu replied. Her voice was rather high-pitched, she was encouraging Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang operated the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, and nursed his injuries before once again swallowing a white jade dan, which made him much better. That Liao Xiaoyun is very powerful, his strength is close to the nirvana realm. He should be in the mid-stage of the tempering realm. Su Meiyao said. The true martial realm, altogether, had 9 levels. After the true martial realm, one could enter the 3 extreme great realms. These 3 extreme great realms were the spirit martial realm. In this realm divine sense was taken to the extreme. Then there was the soul martial realm. After the extreme peak of divine sense was achieved, a martial spirit was bred and then taken to its extreme peak. In the end there was the tempering realm, where the body was tempered to its extreme limits, which was often the hardest step. This was because cultivation of the body was very hard. Once the pinnacle of the tempering realm was achieved, it led to the great nirvana tribulation. Only if one ses this tribulation, could they enter the nirvana realm. The nirvana realm was the peak of martial might within the mortal world. Chen Xiang still held a lingering fear. Previously, in front of that Liao Xiaoyun, Chen Xiang truly didn't even have the strength to fight back. If only he was in the true martial realm, he would not have been beaten so badly. After a good refinement of your immortal devil body, going through the tempering realm is simply a piece of cake, said Bai Yuyu. When Chen Xiang had left the extreme martial sect, he only brought 2 white jade dawn with him. But this was a high-grade spirit-level healing medicine. For those in the mortal martial realm, it had a very significant effect. Chen Xiang had just recuperated for a day's time and already recovered about half of his strength. He was currently in a cave not too far from the river Ore. He had created this cave using the profound aura finger. It was like digging a sediment and was a very quick process. At this time, Chen Xiang was still recuperating from his injuries and still had quite some time left before complete recovery. He hid in this cave, and took out the inferior alchemical furnace that had been given to him by his father before he started to learn about other low-grade spirit-level Dan. TLN. The other low-grade spirit-level Dan he knows how to refine is the true Qi Dan. While Chun Xiang was in Danxiang Tower, he bought a ton of spirit-level Dan ingredients, and there were at least 10 sets for each different Dan. The most expensive of the herbs had been the ones for the white jade Dan, with each set costing 2,000 crystal stones. He had bought exactly 10 sets of them. Meanwhile, a set of herbs for the true elemental Dan cost 1,500 crystal stones, and he had bought 10 sets of them as well. Both of these Dan were relatively higher in demand among the high-grade spirit-level Dan. Then there was the martial elemental Dan and gathering spirit powder, both categorized as low-grade spirit-level Dan, as well as the melting poison Dan and the exploding Qi Dan, both at the middle-grade spirit level. For all of them, he had bought 20 sets for each. He had a solid foundation and rich experience in refining true Qi Dan, and he believed that it wouldn't be too difficult for him to refine other spirit-level Dan. At most, he would just fail a couple of times. Gathering spirit powder was a crystalline powder that could be taken with water. This was the first time Chen Xiang had refined herbal powder, but compared to Dan it was much easier to refine because he wouldn't have to solidify them. Only after failing 8 times was Chen Xiang able to successfully refine it, using a total of 4 days. However, they were all refined out using that poor-quality alchemical furnace. Next was the martial element Dan. It inherently contained violent elements, which was why refining it was very difficult. Actually, it was harder than refining true Qi Dan. Chen Xiang spent a total time of 10 days, along with 15 failures before he was able to successfully refine one out. After switching to the brilliant flame dragon furnace, Chen Xiang once again failed 3 times, but did not fail in the 2 that followed. Low-grade spirit-level Dan were more difficult compared to the 3 common grades of Dan, all of which Chen Xiang had mastered before. However, after getting experienced in refining low-grade spirit-level Dan, the others were now much easier for him to master. For example, a low-grade spirit-level Dan called Confusing Spirit Powder, Chen Xiang had been successful in refining with just 1 try. When this drug was sprinkled, it could confuse other people's minds. Within the period of confusion, it would make others feel confused and drowsy, and it was a wonder drug used by shady martial artists or to deal with the demon beast. Please support us by adding the series onto your reading list in Novel Update. It helps a lot at 3,000 a bonus chapter. Laughing Face. Chapter 125 Missing. Chapter 125 Missing. Chen Xiang was only 19 years old yet. He was already able to refine 4 different kinds of low-grade spirit-level Dan. If he were to go back to Danxiang Tower and get his alchemist rank certificate, it would certainly scare many people. Half a month said, and he was only a little bit better. After all, his vital organs and meridians had received very serious injuries, and only now had he stabilized them. His condition would not continue to deteriorate, but only with time could he recover bit by bit. Originally Chen Xiang's target was to refine middle-grade spirit-level Dan, only then would he go for the alchemist assessment, but now he had made up his mind to only go when he could refine 2 kinds of high-grade spirit-level Dan so he could become a level 4 alchemist. It should be noted that his apprentice, Yao Haixing, was only a level 3 alchemist. Although there was only a single-digit difference between a level 3 and level 4 alchemist, but it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Level 4 alchemists were able to refine 2 different kinds of high-grade spirit-level Dan, which was in itself extremely terrifying. This was because most people were not like Chen Xiang, who after refining only 10 or 20 times was able to grasp the most crucial point in refinement. Chen Xiang had heard that some alchemists, while learning to refine the true elemental Dan, had failed hundreds of times. Plus, this was one of the better case scenarios. There were many alchemists who had a very unfortunate life, who could never refine the true elemental Dan. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed, said as Chun Xiang was recuperating. He was already successful in refining the 2 middle-grade spirit-level Dan, the exploding Qi Dan and the melting poison Dan. Exploding Qi Dan contained a large amount of violent true Qi. After swallowing it, this true Qi would immediately be released. This released true Qi was very violent, but it would not hurt the dosed martial artists. This type of Dan would allow martial artists to temporarily enhance their strength. It was a very popular Dan, even if their entire true Qi had been depleted. After swallowing an exploding Qi Dan, the martial artist could still release one last powerful blow. During a fight, even if it was just a single extra move, the result could end up completely different and overturn the entire fight. The melting poison Dan was a detoxifying Dan which could produce a special potent and true Qi. It would quickly dissipate the poison within the body, turning it into urine or releasing it through sweat. When martial artists went out to hunt demon beasts, taking 1 or 2 melting poison Dan with them would allow them to be much more relaxed. After refining the 2 middle-grade spirit-level Dans, he accu mulat even more alchemy experience which laid a good solid foundation for refining high-grade spirit-level Dan. Chun Xiang had already disappeared for 2 months after his escape, and had not returned to the extreme martial sect. Gu Dongchen and Wu Keiming had secretly sent people to search for their young martial uncle. Although it was very difficult for them to accept a goofball as their young martial uncle, he was still technically their martial uncle, and they still had to respect his seniority. This brat shouldn't have died, right? If later on, teacher or that insane old man came to learn about this, then they would raise hell. Wu Keiming said with an anxious look. According to the information we have received, he definitely escaped, yet not even his shadow has been seen in these last 2 months. It is highly likely that he is still recuperating. Liao Xiaoyun, this little rascal, actually dared to do such a thing. Remember that 100 years ago he once contradicted me. If you had not stopped me, I would have slapped off his rotten mouth. Gu Dongchen had a furious expression on his face. Looking at his expression, it was perfectly obvious that he could not wait to head towards the true martial sect and immediately beat Liao Xiaoyun to death. Wu Keiming said, "Dean, this Liao Xiaoyun is a treasure of the true martial sect. In just 3 years he has achieved the tempering realm. It will not be long before he begins his path down nirvana. At that time, he would be the first to ever enter the nirvana realm this quickly. Fastest my ass, if he cannot cope with the nirvana great tribulation, then any genius is nothing more than Hi plus T." Gu Dongchen looked out of the window, his eyes twinkling. "I need to take a trip to the beast martial sect, and force them to remove the bounty on Chun Xiang. Otherwise this brat is going to face even more hards. Hi plus PS in the future." The beast martial sect is relying on their 3 newly advanced nirvana realm martial artists to gain a mile after getting an inch from us, the extreme martial sect. They were actually in the wrong in that matter, yet they still dared post a reward on Chun Xiang. Wu Keiming furiously shouted. "They know the nirvana great tribulation for all 3 of us is not far away. They want to take advantage of the fact we are concentrating on the nirvana great tribulations and seize the position of the strongest sect in the Qinwu mainland. Meanwhile the true martial sect just seems ready to make trouble." Gu Dongchen looked extremely serious. The nirvana realm had a total of 9 great tribulations. When the martial artist's strength was elevated to a certain extent, a great tribulation would descend. After crossing each great tribulation, one would become even more powerful, but similarly the next great tribulation would also become even more frightening. Historically, many geniuses had fallen while attempting to cross the 9 nirvana tribulations. Gu Dongchen and Wu Keiming, these vigorous old men, had survived these great tribulations again and again. Also, I have no idea where third sister has gone. She said she was going into closed-door training, but not once have I seen her inside the mysterious realm. All day she is so secretive. Our extreme martial sect has been relying on her high-quality, refined Dan for support." Gu Dongchen helplessly sighed. There were truly not many excellent alchemists out there. Yeah, she originally had a great chance to become a Dan King, but who could expect her to be seriously injured while crossing the Great Tribulation, leading her purple moon fire spirit being weakened? It is truly regretful. Wu Kaming sighed. Chen Xiang had always though Elder Dan was a Dan King, but who would have thought she was the same as Su Meiyao, a Dan ancestor? Nevertheless, this level was already extremely hard to achieve. While hiding in the cave, Chen Xiang was oblivious to the fact that millions of people were searching for him. The majority of these people were trying to find him for the reward, because they had learned Chen Xiang escaped with serious injuries. As long as they could grab Chen Xiang, they could get 200,000 crystal stones as a reward. The Beast Martial Sect had once again increased the reward, and this was right after Gu Dongchen took a trip to visit the Beast Martial Sect. Their intentions were very obvious. They were being intentionally provocative towards the extreme martial sect and intentionally didn't give face to Gu Dongchen. The Beast Martial Sect and the Extreme Martial Sect both equally hated each other to an extreme because Huang Jitian had once killed the Beast Martial Sect's dean. In light of this point, the hatred between them could not be resolved in any way. Seemingly in response, Gu Dongchen also issued a ruthless statement. If anyone stronger than Chen Xiang was going to try to kill him to seek the reward, no matter who they were, that person would become the #1 enemy of the extreme martial sect. At that time, all the elders of the extreme martial sect would be dispatched. If they got hold of them, he or she would be tortured to death. All the elders of the extreme martial sect were very powerful, and no one doubted Gu Dongchen's words were merely an empty threat. If he said it, they would definitely follow through with it. Others thought Gu Dongchen did this in order to secretly clash with the Beast Martial Sect, but how could they have known that he did it to make it somewhat safer for his young martial uncle? In these past 2 months, Chen Xiang had not only learned more about alchemy, but also refined a ma's sieve amount of true Qi Dan, a total of more than 1,000, all of which he intended to sell. As for the true Qi Dan he had obtained previously, he had already eaten all of them. What he needed right now was a substantial amount of crystal stones to buy the herbs required for the refinement of high-grade spirit-level Dan. This was because when he was refining high-grade spirit-level Dan, he had failed in all of his attempts. Now you should start refining building foundations Dan. Their difficulty is around the same as high-grade spirit-level Dan. Since you don't have any more herbs for high-grade spirit-level Dan, you should learn how to refine the building foundation Dan. If you're successful, you should soon be able to enter the true martial realm. Su Meiyao said. Chen Xiang was elated in his heart, but at the same time it was almost unbearable. The materials for the building foundation Dan were very expensive, and every time he failed his heart would feel like bleeding. What are you so scared of? Obtaining 1,000-year beast Dan isn't necessary for you. To replace it, you could simply hunt down demon beasts and get their monster Dan. As for the herbs, you have the dragon saliva exercise. What are you so afraid of? Su Meiyao continued speaking. Tielin. Okay, so in the previous chapter someone commented and asked why Liao Xiaoyun attacked Chen Xiang even though he was much more powerful and didn't need the crystal stones. First off, who doesn't like free money? Second, and the much more important one, as it was explained in this chapter, the extreme martial sect is currently at the top position and some sects dislike that, so they are creating trouble to try and humiliate the extreme martial sect. Cause the most powerful figures are busy getting ready to cross their tribulation, they are bound to try and create trouble. One more chapter to come. Chapter 126 A Woman's Heart. Chapter 126 A Woman's Heart. This chapter is sponsored by Sebastian Tissire. Thank you for your support. Chen Xiang's heart was pounding as he was debating whether or not he should attempt to refine The thousand vein fruit, metal spirit fruit, and azure profound fruit. He had more than 20 of each, which was more than enough for him to try 20 times. The life element inside the 1,000-year beast Dan was only enough for him to try 5 times. As for the other auxiliary spirit herbs, he was definitely not lacking in them. As for the purple spirit fruit, 1,000-year-old ginseng, blood spirit GRA. Radix, earth spirit GRA. S and others, they were all herbs he obtained from the herb garden, and he still had plenty. Chen Xiang also knew that in order to protect himself, he needed to enter the true martial realm. Otherwise he would become targeted by those who had reached the true martial realm, and he would once again be said and forced to escape, or he might even be killed. Su Meiyao thought for a moment and once again began speaking. Use the brilliant flame dragon furnace while refining, because refining it will require a lot of time. As much as 1 or 2 months, at the very least it would still take 8 to 10 days. Also, in order to bake those herbs into herbal powder, you need to use extremely high temperatures, and when you fuse the herbal spirit qi, it would require even more time and spirit. Chen Xiang nodded his head in response and took out the herbs required for refining a building foundation Dan. He was currently hiding in the mountainside, and in order to ensure more safety, he dug a passage from under the river leading to the mountainside, making it ever more difficult for people to find him. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu both came out. The cave was illuminated by luminous stones, and the environment could not be considered bad, as there was also a nearby lake. Take each herb and divide each of them into 4 equal parts. Su Meiyao ordered while glancing at the spirit herbs that were exuding all kinds of peculiar spirit qis. What, divided into 4? Chen Xiang couldn't understand and asked. Exactly. Divide a metal spirit fruit into 4 equal parts and do the same for a azure profound fruit. Now do you understand? Divide a single set of building foundation Dan marshals into 4 parts and refine them individually. All of your herbs have sufficient spirit qi, this will not damage them at all. Additionally, if you fail now, it will be less disheartening. Su Meiyao teased while smiling slightly. At the same time she grabbed a knife and started cutting a metal spirit fruit. Chen Xiang now understood. He had also once thought of doing this, but previously the herbs were not of a superior enough quality to do so, and after cutting them much of their spirit qi would be dispersed. In order to prevent the dispersal of spirit qi from the herbs, Su Meiyao made Chen Xiang dilute the dragon saliva using water, and then soaked the cut-off spirit herbs in it. That way, not only would the spirit qi of the herbs not be dispersed, but on the contrary it would increase by a lot. Sister Meiyao, I had not expected that not only were you so beautiful, but also equally clever. Who said big chest means no brains, all nonsense? Chen Xiang said while smiling. It definitely wouldn't hurt to flatter Su Meiyao. If my junior sister wasn't clever, she would never have become so strong. Even more, she would definitely not have become a powerful alchemist. Bai Yuyu said. Su Meiyao tenderly spat. Good. Brat, have you or have you not previously considered me and Sister Yuyu as only big chests and no brains? Chen Xiang saw that Bai Yuyu looked colder than usual. He could not help but take glances again and again at the proud chest of Bai Yuyu, but he still hastily said, Sister Meiyao, why do you want to drag in Sister Yuyu? Previously I was just kidding, just joking around. He had already seen everything from these 2 beauties. Chen Xiang would never forget this, and it was the same for Bai Yuyu and Su Meiyao. After all, they were women, and this kind of thing would be taken even more seriously inside their hearts. In fact, they would often think about it. However, they also knew that Chen Xiang at that time had no choice in the matter, besides it also gifted them a great hope. Right now, both beauties once again thought about the time Chen Xiang saw their perfect jade bodies, and their face could not help but turn red. However, Chen Xiang was concentrating on cutting the herbs and was completely oblivious of this fact. or else he would have definitely been stunned at their facial expressions. Chen Xiang was first cutting the main herbs, before sorting out the other auxiliary herbs and uniformly cutting them. This was all done very carefully, otherwise it would affect the alchemy. However, it is very important to know that Chen Xiang had now been refining dawn for quite a long time, so he was clear on how much each section should be. This sort of subtle feeling was a must-have for alchemists. Sister Yu, Sister Meiyao, who do you two like? When your strength was at its pinnacle, hadn't there been a lot of people who chased you? Chen Xiang curiously asked. Like Hel. These two divine girls were ordinary existences. He had read long and heard as well as scoured a lot of historical texts, but still hasn't found out anything about them. He suspected that they were from other mortal martial worlds, like Elder Dan. Although I have encountered many powerful men, I have never liked any of them. In my entire lifetime I would never have this sort of feeling. This is mainly because the primary exercise I cultivate is called the Ruthless Devil Skill. Bai Yu coldly said. While some people did chase me, they were unable to defeat me, so I refused them on those grounds. Bai Yu truthfully replied. This actually made Chen Xiang somewhat surprised but also doubtful. He glanced at Su Meiyao and saw that her eyes were full of concern, as if she was worried about Bai Yu. Sister Meiyao, what about you? Chen Xiang asked. As they had spent more time with each other, they had all become a bit more familiar. Sometimes he would also ask about some relatively large issues. I'd like to find a good man, but that is too hard. My teacher was powerful enough, but he was still not able to give us maximum protection, otherwise we would not be in this situation. Su Meiyao replied in a low voice. Afterward she gently laughed. Don't look at me like that, not a single person has actually chased me, because I was an alchemist. Other people could not afford to have such high aspirations, not to mention the fact that my reputation was even more ferocious than senior sisters. Such an enchanting and moving Yaojing actually had a ferocious reputation. Chen Xiang found it somewhat hard to believe. Chen Xiang was sure that these two women had hid many things from him, and perhaps even lied to him about some things. He had begun to suspect that these two were not from the mortal martial world, but had already gone to the heavenly realms, otherwise their enemy would not be so strong. But how would people from the heavenly realms appear in the mortal world? After all, only at the time of the intersections of the three worlds would they be able to descend to the mortal world. Could it be that both of them arrived at this mortal martial world 100,000 years ago during the time of the last great battles between the three realms? Chen Xiang, while thinking in his heart, was secretly shocked, but he immediately rejected this notion. This was because even during the three realms fusion, the heavenly realms and the mortal world remained separated. Do not think too much about it. Should you live well and fully play out the yin and yang divine vein to its full potential, you might be able to transcend me and senior sister. At that time, I might think of making you my man. Su Meiyao coquettishly winked at Chen Xiang and said with a pretty smile. This made Chen Xiang's mind suddenly fall into utter chaos. Cough, cough. I already have Xian. Chen Xiang replied. So what? If I'm willing to be your woman, do you think I would care about that? Su Meiyao mischievously smiled before touching Chen Xiang's face. At this time, Chen Xiang acted like a shy girl as he blushed before turning away. His heart was pounding. The herbs had already been systematically arranged. Chen Xiang began refining the building foundation dan. He intended to try refining a few times before asking Su Meiyao about the difficulties he encounters. He originally only had 15 sets or herbs, but after cutting them it had become a total of 60. He believed that he would absolutely not fail more than 50 times. Using the brilliant flame dragon furnace to refine the building foundation dan, he actually only needed an hour, but that was only for the cut-off herbs. Besides, he also failed in the middle of refining. Please support us by voting for us on Novel Update's rating system and adding us to your reader list. We currently have 198 votes and 29.75, and so for every 50 votes, so at 250, then at 300 we will give out an extra chapter, and for every additional 100 reader lists, at 3,000 to smooth things out, we will give out an extra chapter. Thanks for the support, laughing face.